We'll reconvene to open session at 5:30. The board met in closed session, but no action was taken. Is there a motion to approve student disciplinary cases 33, 34, 36, 37, and 38 as recommended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
I'll call for the vote then, please.
Did you get asked to vote?
Yeah.
No, I'm an
Yes.
aye. Apparently I'm not signed.
Motion carries 4-0. I invite everyone to stand for the flag salute. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we'll call for the vote then, please.
Let's see, it's not.
It's not.
Oh, okay. No, I just want to make sure it's not me.
They could kick me out.
Go back and amend it.
Mhm.
You need to announce that now.
I am an aye, Mrs. Warbeck. It's not coming up.
Oh, it did just now.
Oh, did it? Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but you need to announce that now to the public.
Yes, then we'll go back and
Yeah.
return to closed session at the end.
The denial.
Yeah. Mm. Okay, motion carries 4-0. We will need to take action on an item, so at the end of the meeting, we will need to return to closed session and then take action and come back and report out. That takes us to the oath of office. Mr. Peterson?
Okay, if I could have the entire board join me back here. You can line up here so everyone can see you, and I'll kind of stand to the side. And when I say aye, you're going to say your name. Okay? I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California,
That I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Well done. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations, everyone. That takes us to the election of officers. So this is our organizational meeting. So each year we do elect officers for the board. And our board bylaws do state that trustee cannot serve more than 2 consecutive years as president. So this concludes my meeting as president. But I did want to thank the board members for the privilege of serving in that position. And so we will open that up for discussion. And I'd like to start with our current vice president, Mrs. Ham.
We can just open it up, right?
To see if, open up for discussion, and but just to see if there's interest in serving in that position.
Well, I nominate Ms. Erin Ham to take the office of president of the MUHSD Board of Trustees.
And I second that nomination.
Any comments, Mrs. Ham, or?
Well, I would have big shoes to fill, but I accept the nomination. Thank you.
Okay, then we will go ahead and take a roll call vote. Mr. Jayasinga?
I'm an aye.
Mr. Lopez?
Aye.
Mrs. Ham?
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So with
Thank
that,
you.
we welcome our new president, Mrs. Ham.
Yay, Ms. Ham.
Thank you.
So the gavel is all yours, Mrs. Ham.
Thank you. I think at this point, Mr. Peterson, we need to nominate you as secretary as well. Is
You're
that
gonna
correct,
appoint me,
Leslie?
yes.
Appoint you? Okay. Okay, okay. So at this time, we will elect a vice president. Is there a nomination for vice president?
I'll make a motion to nominate Amalie Jayasinga as vice president.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you. I accept that nomination.
All right. I'd like to amend the motion to include the appointment of Superintendent Peterson as secretary as part of this vote as well. We'll call for the vote.
I am an aye.
Aye.
I am an aye.
And I am an aye also. 4-0. At this time, the board will elect a clerk. Is there a nomination for clerk?
I nominate Tiffany Pickle as clerk.
Is
I
there a
second that.
Okay.
Motion.
Any discussion?
No discussion.
Are you interested?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Okay.
That was very definitive.
Call for the vote?
I am an aye.
I'm an aye.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So, your new board, or your new
Yay.
officers are
Yay.
before you. Thank you, Richard, for serving as an officer for many, many, many years. Now we have a new team here, and I do want to share that Julio Valadez is very ill and so is not with us today. He wanted the public to know. So at this time, Mrs. Cope, we welcome you to present tonight's showcase.
Start with a what? Oh, no, we don't want to sing, Mr. Pest. Okay, good evening, President Ham and board members, Superintendent Peterson, Cabinet, Ms. Rohrbach. It is my honor to welcome you to El Capitan. My name is Megan Cope, and I am the principal. And I would like to start with our El Capitan showcase. So this evening, we're going to be talking about rebuilding the legacy. So at El Capitan, we have been working really hard on our culture and talking about what our culture should look like, how it should feel when people come to campus, how our staff should feel, how our students should feel. So we were very strategic in our approach to rebuilding our culture. And in fact, that's why the hashtag is rebuilding the legacy, because that is the hashtag that we've been attaching to our social media post when we refer back to our maxims. So culture with purpose, so we're really trying to pull our maxims in, which are lead, love, learn, and leave a legacy. And so everything we're doing is surrounded around our maxims and what those mean and what those should look like here at El Capitan. So I'd like to talk about our 3 R's, which are respond, restore, and reward. We'll start with respond. So when we talk about discipline and our disciplinary responses, we were aware that when the 4 of 5 new admin coming to El Capitan this year, that we needed to make some changes with discipline. We needed to change our approach. We needed to be strategic. So one of the things is we took a proactive approach. So when we work with kids in discipline, we are connecting with them ahead of time. We're talking with them. We're looking at the data. We're looking at their history in Aries. We're talking about what's happened here in the past, and we're not ignoring it. We also deal with things swiftly. So the small things, so dress code, tardies, and in a second I'm going to have Miguel zoom in on the data to show you guys some numbers. But we also have really stepped up our game on parent involvement as far as making contact to parents, because when things happen at school, parents want to know. And oftentimes those parents can be a support for us when we need some help with their children's behavior, their grades, their social emotional well-being. We've increased our SSTs in our parent meetings, and we have put some things in place to make us more accountable to ourselves, to ensure that we all see who's being referred to for an SST, when it's happening, and when it's getting done. Same with fair and consistent consequences. We have to make sure that we are consistent with our students and that builds trust. They know when something happens to one kid and something doesn't happen to another because they talk. We don't share that, but they know. And when they know, they start to lose trust in us, and that's not right. So we are consistent, and all these students know that we truly care about them, but we're also going to hold them to a high standard. Same thing, I just said that, high expectations. It's about expecting a lot from our students in class, on the field, in the community. We had some very detailed agenda chats this year that we spent an entire period in each class, and we really talked a lot about what it means to be at El Capitan and what our new expectations are. And we heard a lot of, oh, well, we got to wear this last year. And I said, well, that's great, but keep that for a Saturday. That's not going to be a Monday through Friday shirt anymore. Miguel, can you show us the data, please? Thank you. Can you zoom in a little bit more? So on this is now, I want you guys to know that this is a comparison from last year, full year, to just our first semester. But as you can see, we have, and I know it's a little tough, I should have put that all in black, dress code. Just this semester alone, we've had 109 infractions. Our tardies this year we are only at 4,900 tardies, whereas last year, the entire year, they were at almost 29,000. So we're working really hard to push our students to class, and we were honestly kind of nervous because we had all of the construction happening. Our suspension numbers have decreased, so have our expulsions, while our telephone calls home have significantly increased. Last year, the entire year, documented, there were about 700 and I think that's 28 phone calls, and this year we're at almost 1,800 phone calls in the first semester. So we're really trying to involve the parents whenever something is happening. Also, last year there were 15 documented referrals to the counseling department, and this year there have been 316. Miguel, can you zoom out for me, please? One more time. And then let's talk about restore. So I'd like to invite Adeline and Ariana up, two of our wonderful students who are here tonight to speak about last year and this year.
Good evening, Superintendent, Cabinet, and board members. My name is Adelina Brady, and this is my sister, Ariana Pena. We are here to tell you about our experience at El Capitan High School. I am currently a senior, and when walking through the gates for this final year, I had matured but thought negatively about El Capitan because of the last 3 years and how bad things were here. I had assumed things would be the same with discipline, and nobody really cared about us. Most of us seniors could not think of any positive things to say when all the principals came to our classes and gave us the school rules talk. A lot of us thought it was a very bad school and would continue that way because of the fights and daily drama. But El Capitan hasn't just grown with new staff and admin, but also made a positive impact on all students. I personally see the students now have proper guidance. I really appreciate how we get recognized for our growth and achievements because it shows that El Capitan cares for us students. So far, my senior year has been amazing, and I'm looking forward to graduation.
Good evening, everyone. I am a junior this year, and I have had a big change from last year. Last year, I got into some trouble and fights that led me to being expelled from El Capitan. Coming back this year, I was expecting the same outcome as last year. Fighting all the time, always in trouble, and more, but a lot has changed this year for the better for us at El Capitan High School. I love how caring the staff is. The admin is doing a great job communicating with students, which I believe has changed kids for their behavior. Last year, I feel like the staff did not communicate with all students like they do now. I love how this year we have been doing a lot of things to do with different cultures because I feel like everyone should learn about other cultures. I see a change in the students this year. They are a lot more engaged and more open to staff because they listen to us and do not just judge us based on our past. I also really appreciate how every person in the admin building has their doors open and they are always available to students no matter what the issue is. I am looking forward to a great senior year.
We are very proud of these two students. They have made some huge growth this year, and we are looking forward to the continued growth from them in the upcoming years. I'm going to talk more about restorative practices a little bit more in my principal's report, but we're doing a lot with restorative justice, and we're doing a lot with mediation and different things for students. And one of the big things is that, you can see from the side, is that we're working on relationships and about how to make people connect, how to restore those broken relationships, whether it's student to student, whether it's staff to student, whatever it may be, even admin to student. We're working together to really rebuild those relationships through communication and through understanding and teaching our students how to be kind and accepting of others. We're also increasing our mediations for teachers and staff. So every time a student is removed from the class for whatever the reason, the expectation is that the staff and the student do mediate to talk about what has happened and restore that before they return to class. We also are having students do reflections. So anytime students are sent out, they are expected to complete a reflection form on what happened, what they could have done differently, and what they're going to do moving forward. Miguel, yeah, go ahead and pull out. There we go. All right, and the last spot, go ahead, let's check it out, reward. So this is one of the really exciting things, and this takes our entire team at El Capitan to make this happen. But what we've been doing is we've been doing a huge number of rewards for students. They're directly tied to our maxims. So our first quarter was related to LEAD. So any student who displayed leadership on campus by having no discipline or less than 3 tardies were rewarded with Kona Ice in the fall, back when it was warm. So we were able to reward 1,278 students with that reward for displaying good behavior and demonstrating leadership on campus. Similarly, this quarter, in fact, we're still working on it this week. Poor Mr. Nunes is a little exhausted from hot cocoa and marshmallows, but we've been able to reward 1,431 students who have improved their GPA from quarter 1 to the next progress mark, or they've had a 3.5 and higher and they've been able to maintain that. So we're finding ways to reward students for doing good things and tying it directly to our maxims. So we do have some other, our love is going to happen in quarter 3, and our legacy will happen in quarter 4 with some additional incentives, and we're still working on those. We also have staff nominations and even student-to-student nominations. So students can nominate their peers when they see them doing good things too. We have small lunch group incentives. So for students who maybe have had some more significant behaviors that have really demonstrated huge growth and improvement, we're rewarding them in small groups and letting them bring some of their friends along, because we know the power and the impact that that has, and it spreads just like a ripple. Okay, thank you so much. One more time, and that'll take us back to the front. So that is our showcase for the evening.
obviously, I appreciate the stories, and obviously positive things are happening here. And just to hear the students' experiences within the first semester of school, and how it's impacted their life in a positive way, and it's changing the environment of the school district or the school site, and it's making an impact. That's fantastic to hear. So thank you. Thank you to all your admin team for that. Yeah.
Everybody.
Do I just roll into the principal's report now?
You're on.
Awkward.
Oh no, Miguel, go back to the other one and the video. So there's no sound on this video. This is just some pictures of great things that have been happening here at El Capitan while we go through the principal's report. So this year at El Capitan was different from any of the previous years. The year began with 4 new administrators, a new intervention coordinator, and our campus zoned almost entirely as a construction site. Quite frankly, I was a little nervous when I first got here because everything had fencing around it, and I wasn't sure how that was going to work. But our site has been very flexible and understanding, which has been fantastic. This slideshow is going to demonstrate a variety of things that show who ECHS is and how we're making progress. We've made great progress in rebuilding our culture on campus by using the 3R approach: respond, restore, and reward. As I talked about earlier just today, Mr. Nunes is on his 3rd day of hot cocoa and cookies, where we rewarded the juniors for their GPA from quarter 1. We have not made changes to the discipline matrix, but we have adjusted how we respond to behaviors and provide interventions and consequences. Our interventions have directly correlated with the new position of the intervention coordinator. Mr. Sanchez is behind me, and the work that he's been doing with our students. I can't tell you how impactful his position is on campus without you just seeing it. Mr. Sanchez works with a variety of students. He builds connections with them, and he knows exactly what they're doing all day long in every single class, whether it's good or bad. And when things start to kind of vibrate and we know that there's some things going to pop off, Mr. Sanchez is already there. He already knows what's happening, and he's already working with them to go back to the plans they've established, the things they've created, to make sure that the kids refocus themselves back on their goal and their focus. And so I do have to say that Mr. Sanchez has been a very important part to our success with our students, especially when we talk about student behavior. I am so proud of our staff and students at El Capitan for their willingness to take on a growth mindset and work to mediate through difficult situations. I think that's evident through our mediations that teachers have been participating in. Before, I think teachers were a little scared to call home, but we have been working to overcome that and to know the power of including the parent and the parent feedback. And so we've been supporting them in making those phone calls to make sure that that happens, so that we communicate, so they are aware of everything that's going on, and we see that come back in such a positive way. We've built a system to reward our students and our staff. We've divided our staff into a couple of teams to make a friendly competition, and we now have a legacy and a gaucho award that we pass on from staff to staff for certificated and also classified. And it's multiple ways of being able to recognize individuals, students and staff, throughout the year for different things that they do. And oftentimes it's not from us, it's from them recognizing each other, which is very powerful as well. We have found ways to reconnect our classified and our certificated and our administration so that everyone understands that we are in the same boat and rowing in the same direction. Our instruction continues to improve, and we support our teachers through a variety of options for professional development. We have a set of non-negotiables as admin, and one of those is something I actually learned from Mr. Swartwood, where we have an open door policy, and you heard one of the ladies speak about that as well, which is a wonderful thing because they know that we are available for them. And then now I'm learning that they also, we need to work on what it means when the door is closed. So sometimes they, sometimes they know that they have such good access to us that even when that door is closed, they kind of barge in. So we're working on some boundaries as well, but it's fantastic. So we're soliciting input from parents and students and community members. I've offered 3 coffees with principal sessions, one at Tenaya, one at El Capitan, and another on Zoom. In January, we will be visiting South Merced again to speak with parents about any concerns they have. And lastly, we continue to improve our branding. We've been increasing the awareness of our maxims and what they mean. What does it mean to learn, love, lead, and leave a legacy? And how do we continue to work on these skills? We're increasing awareness by adding some splashes of color around campus. We're going to be having some banners put up in our parking lot this week. I'm very excited about that. And there'll be more to come once the construction is complete. Thank you.
Ms. Cope, I think the only R that's missing from your 3 R's would be the context of their speech, and then what you've spoken to us now is you're branching out. You're trying to build a relationship with the community and the parents and the students, and your teams are doing that. So I think it's speaking volumes of the changes that you've been making here at LCAP, so thank you for that.
I just want to say thank you, and how impressive it is that you've done so much and made so many positive changes in really a relatively short period of time. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you to you and your mostly new team for everything you guys have done so far. I have a freshman and a junior here. You all know that. And so I'm on campus for different sporting events. And I have to say, the way you and your team and the students have worked around all the construction has actually made it seem like it's not even happening. And funnily enough, even my 2 teens have commented on that, how easy they've been able to move around despite the construction. And with all the sporting events you've had and all the other activities, nice job working through all of that. So congratulations, and look forward to many great things for the team here at LCAP.
Yep. Thank you to you and your whole staff for the big turnaround, and there's so many great things going on, but if I had to pick one, I love that you're reaching out to parents. You're right. They want to hear. They want to get engaged and involved, but they think once their kid starts high school that they're not supposed to be, right? But they are. Parents, we need you. Get in there. So thank you, Mrs. Cope. Now is the general comment period, and before we get started, I need to read these remarks. The meeting is recorded, and individuals addressing the board are asked to fill out a speaker card located in the back of the room. Complete a blue card to speak to an item not on the agenda, and a yellow card to speak to an item on the agenda. Please return the card to the administrative secretary of the governing board. Individuals addressing the board shall be limited to 3 minutes, each with no more than 20 minutes per topic. During this portion of the agenda, the public is invited to comment on items which are not on the agenda but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board of Trustees. The board will take no action at this time but may refer the issue for further consideration. Individuals who wish to comment on agenda items shall be provided an opportunity to comment after the staff report and before the board's consideration of that item. Individuals who cannot wait to address the board when the agenda item is addressed make their comments at this time. So I would like to call forward Mr. Rick Wendling.
Hi there. Board, Rick Wendling, Merced. First of all, congratulations to you all on being elected to office and new offices. I'm here again to help you, support you to defend and support the Constitution of the United States of America and of the state of California, because I'm going to hold you to it. Okay, it's a very solemn oath that you have taken, and we expect you, as well as myself, to strive to find truth the best we can. I'm asking the principal sort of behind my back here, do you have what is, we call it the city school district, a district progress, my goodness, can't read my own writing, assessment, district progress assessment, so that I might find out how you're assessing the learning part of the agenda here. And the main topic I want to talk to you about in 2 minutes is we know that our wonderful president has declared that the COVID pandemic has ended. However, here in the state, we're still under our wonderful governor's state of health emergency. And that means that the COVID is important to you and me. And I've given you all this graph that I have been researching over the last over 2 years to find out what's actually happening. And so our children are dying at a very, very almost insignificant rate, which means that the COVID is grossly overblown. Only people my age and up are the ones who have died, and I haven't yet, and I'm not jabbed. So it's important that you push back to the state and our county health officer in particular, I'm having a problem there, about pushing this COVID thing and the masks. I've also given you the result of 2 years' worth of research about masks, and I can tell you that wearing a mask does more damage than it does create good. It traps bacteria inside the mask because it grows in moist areas. It doesn't stop virus particles because they are something like 0.125 micrometers in size, whereas these paper masks stop nothing smaller than 0.300 micrometers. Let's see. And it's worse when we have active children and athletes. So if anybody is wearing a mask while running to get to class on time and to avoid tardies, whoop, that was fast. So anyway, I encourage you to tell your kids to stop wearing the masks. We need to see their faces, and at high school level, it's not so important, but it is at the kiddies level. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we'll move on to reports for discussion. Dr. Aguilar, we do have a speaker related to math. Malia Chambers? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, after. I'm sorry, after Dr. Aguilar speaks. I'm still learning the ropes. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, President Ham. Tonight, I will give you an update on the math goal. You can move to the second slide, please. So if you recall, our goal was to set the measurable and reasonable expectations for growth for all students in math in a more meaningful way than a CASP score. And we were really focusing on individual student growth when it comes to math. Next slide. Some of the actions. Thank you. Some of the actions that we have taken thus far are to move math teachers to a student-centered classroom around instruction. And we're going to continue with the professional development for teachers. I was able to share with you some feedback with regard to the professional development that we are providing our teachers through MCOE. It is ongoing. We just met yesterday and I got that data. It is extensive, but it's been shared with you, and we are now in the process of calendaring more professional development with MCOE for this upcoming year. Secondly, we're creating local assessments for quarter 3 and 4. Those are done. For the fall, currently our teachers do have access to Edulastic, which is a testing program. We will create quarter 1 and quarter 2 local assessments after we get the results from quarter 3 and 4. So we are backwards mapping from the results that we get from 3 and 4. We are very, very confident that we will have those done in a very timeful manner because of the data that we'll get from quarter 3 and quarter 4. We will also create a pretest and a post-test. So the sequence goes like this. In the spring, we are working and we are scheduling to have all of our feeder schools give a diagnostic test to ensure that we are placing our students correctly, teacher recommendation, a CASP score, and the Merced Union High School District diagnostic. Students are then placed correctly into their math class. Once they're in that math class, we are going to give them the pretest. We want to see where they are, so we're going to create that baseline. Students will take quarter one. Teachers will see the progress or lack thereof that students are making. We'll do the same with quarter three. We'll do this quarter two, do the same with quarter three, and then they'll take the quarter four benchmark, at which time they will also take the post-test. So along the line of all of those quarter tests, we will see the amount of growth or stagnation or regression, we hope not, throughout the year. With that work, we're also revising our essential standards. Those assessments, local assessments that we are creating, these are snapshots of the essential standards that our teachers are identifying are critical for student growth in mathematics. Next, another strategy that we are implementing. This is being currently piloted at Golden Valley High School. We want to enroll the higher performing integrated A students into an integrated 1 class. This is currently being done at Golden Valley High School. Okay? There is a commitment then to make the integrated 1 classes smaller so students get more attention and support since they're being moved up and into an integrated 1 class. The integrated A student will still be in an integrated A, but now you're talking about the middle of the students that are integrated A. Those class sizes are also smaller. Then we also have students that are really far below grade level. So we are looking at creating and piloting a new math class, much like what we're doing with Read 180. We're looking at curriculum called Math 180 as an example. We have met with our math teachers. We are asking every site to identify at least 1 teacher to teach 1 section minimum at each campus to pilot this class with curriculum. That class will have students that are below and are really struggling with math concepts with the hope to get them up to move into an integrated A or an integrated 1 class before graduation.
Dr. Aguilar?
Yes.
Are you fielding questions as you go or at the end? What's your preference?
Well, I was going to pose one final question.
Go ahead.
And then we'll open it up for discussion. That is the last slide, and that does conclude my presentation. And I wanted to circle back to the last board meeting that we had. My understanding of the last board meeting was that we were looking at ensuring that all of our students have the skills necessary to be successful post-high school, not necessarily a 3rd year of math as a graduation requirement. And with that, I'll pose that statement / question and open it up for discussion.
Tiffany, do you have some questions, comments?
Yes, a few of both. How is that pilot going at Golden Valley? So so it's still a little bit early, but
Well, we will for sure have semester grades here when we get back, and we will know definitely. Anecdotally, and I know Mr. Pest is also a math teacher at Golden Valley, but anecdotally, we just had a math meeting with our sites, and students are actually doing better than they have historically done in an integrated A class. Students are also getting support through the math teacher, Amandeep, who is dedicated to ensuring that students are getting the necessary support to ensure that they're being successful. So it's going very, very well.
I like the emphasis on improving the instructional practices, making it more, student-centered, a little bit more, engaging, and that's where I personally would like to see the emphasis over a third year, at this point, instead of adding a year to something that we're still working on improving. I would like to see the focus on the improvement right now. Those are just my thoughts. And then also a balance between the programs and the actual teacher-student interactions. And do you feel that we're becoming a little bit too dependent on some of the programs? And will there be, an emphasis on balancing that appropriately?
There is, and if you look, and I know it's a lot of data, and I just got it myself yesterday afternoon in meeting with the Merced County Office of Ed team. If you look at the feedback, the big takeaways for our teachers is that, and this is straight from the data that they've shared with us from the teachers, is that they are now able to have more strategies, more tools in their toolbox for that student-centered classroom and not be so reliant on just the book, right? So that in itself, I think will really help with the learning process with all of our math students.
Dr. Agner, what's the biggest difference between the CASP math score and then the test that MUHSD will be giving our feeder school students coming in, 8th grade students?
Yeah, so the CASP is a statewide norm standardized exam that is given. It is incredibly difficult. It is not an easy exam. If you look at the current data that we have, students that are even going through and completing 3 or plus years are not succeeding on that exam. Now, the caveat to that is that exam is meaningless to our students. And what I mean by that is that there is no incentive for our students to do well on it. It doesn't require them to do well for the college acceptance. There's no negative consequence for them not putting their best effort to do the exam. Our local assessments are completely tied to essential standards from Common Core standards that our teachers have identified as essential to build on one another to be successful at the next level of math. So if you're looking at the assessments that all of our teachers have put together, they have looked at the essential standards, which are from the Common Core, and said these are the necessary standards that we need to teach in order to get the students the skills necessary to build on the next standard and the previous class, or the next class, so that they can be successful.
So is there going to be some sort of communication to where the parents, because it's usually parents who may not consider the CASP important enough, so that they know that some thought and effort needs to be put into the MUHSD math test that their students will be taking? How's that communication going to be relayed to our middle school students?
Yeah, so it's early onset. It's really right now at the very beginning of us meeting with all the feeder schools and ensuring that they understand the process, that we're not going to give an exam every year like they do at the middle school or the elementary, that there is an exam, but it's not until the junior year. And that's really hard for parents to comprehend. It's like, what do you mean they don't have a test the freshman year or the sophomore year? And we just have to simply explain to them that it's not until the third year for math and English, unlike elementary. Every site communicates that differently as we're preparing to give the CASP exam. I don't know if Ms. Cope is still here, or if she's left, or if she wants to share perhaps maybe some of the strategies that she uses to inform parents that the CASP is going to be given throughout a certain part of the year in certain time blocks. I don't know if you want to share maybe a little bit about what you do to announce this to your parents.
So my question was for the incoming students, because the test that we're going to be giving is for the 8th graders, correct? So
Oh, I
the-
see, the diagnostic
yeah,
test.
the diagnostic
Yes.
test. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's
So
what I
the
meant.
diagnostic test, we work with all of our feeder schools, and
Mhm.
our feeder schools communicate to all of the children that are being tested. We also have the course fairs and the orientations that are coming up here in January and February. And through that time, students are selecting their courses, but at the same time, we're also communicating to the parents that they will be given a diagnostic for placement, and that we need to make sure that the students do well and take that seriously, because that's going to determine how they're placed in school. Also with that, we also need to educate, and through this process, we let our parents know that if their child does not start an integrated 1, that they're already starting behind to meet their 3-year math requirement to get to a CSU or UC, if that's what their goal is. So it's informing the parents now as we're orienting them into or onto our campus. I don't know, Megan, if you'd like to add to that with your course fair and some of the things that you do.
I'm back. So some of the things that we do for our course fair, so when we go out to the middle schools, which will be happening in January, we will talk about a variety of things. Our AP of Guidance does attend the transition math meetings with the middle schools, and so they are aware of the time that they're scheduling, and they coordinate together so that when they give the math assessment in April, May, then our math teachers have time to grade it, then we get those scores back, and that helps us in the AP of Guidance department to be able to strategically place students in the appropriate math courses. And so that communication happens between the middle schools and the high schools from starting now all the way up until the end of the spring.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Aguilar, on this, obviously on this math initiative that we're on, it's going to be a district-wide approach, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay? So is there alignment across all of the high schools as far as the essential standards, or are they getting to pick and choose what each side thinks are their essential standards?
No, all the essential standards are the same.
Okay.
It's the meetings that we're having now with our teachers to identify the essential standards that we want to use for the assessments. So all of these are common assessments. They're all the same essential standards district-wide.
And that was my next question then, on the benchmarks, that every high school within our jurisdiction is going to give the same assessment.
That is correct.
And then as far as the students in this pilot class, for those below grade level, is that counting as a year of math?
It is not an A through G
Okay.
requirement, so it will not count for them as a year of math. We would count it as a year of math. In looking at the curriculum, there's still some questions that we have for me to come back and say confidently that we would offer this math, or this class as a math class for graduation. We have to still decide on what that curriculum is. Math 180 is one of the curriculums that we're looking at right now. And there's still a lot of questions as to whether that curriculum can be taught in 1 year, or whether it needs to be broken up into 2 years. We don't know yet, which is why we want to pilot it with at least one section at every campus. Once we get into a little deeper in the spring and make the determination that, say, for example, we want to use Math 80 as the curriculum, then at that point I would bring forward to you as a school board to say we want to count this class as a math graduation credit class.
And then those students who are that you've, I guess, identified to push up, what's the data telling you on their success rate?
It is really good. And again, this is all anecdotal coming from Golden Valley. We had Principal Swartwood talk to all the principals about the process and how it happened. And actually, Megan was at Golden Valley High School, if you'd like to hear from Megan, because she was actually in the guidance department when this happened. And it was very serendipitous, I guess, when this happened. It was kind of by chance, and there was how would I put this nicely, a scheduling error. Is that fair? A scheduling error, and through discussion, Mr. Puss knows, through discussion with the math teachers, they said, well, you know what, let's keep these students here and see what we can do. And they lowered the class sizes to support them, and it's gone incredibly well. I can't give you firm data until we have the semester grades, but again, anecdotally, you have Ms. Cope, who is here, who put that process together at Golden Valley, and then you have Mr. Pest, who's a math department, or math teacher in the department.
And then going back to the assessment piece, we talked about the CASP and then the post-test, and then we talked about the feeder schools and the diagnostic that they're going to take. So an incoming 8th grader is going to take the CASP math test, and then take a diagnostic for the high school.
Correct.
And then turn around come August, they're going to take a pretest.
Correct.
So how do those align as far as student placement? So I can get a 3 on the CASP, right? 3 or 4 on the CASP. I can get a low score on the diagnostic. So, but then according to my CASP, I can be placed in an Algebra 1 class or whatever that may be, you know, but then my pretest is going to say otherwise, could say otherwise. So then what?
So we use 3 criteria for the diagnostic. It's the diagnostic, the CASP, and the teacher recommendation in 8th grade. The teacher recommendation in 8th grade trumps all.
Okay.
So if the teacher in 8th grade that's been with that student the entire year says, you know what, this student can do it, they don't test well, or this was happening in their life, they can do it, they're moved up. We always err on moving a student up than keeping them at a lower class. So there's that criteria. The diagnostic test is, for the most part, fairly accurate now that we've been giving it for several years. And again, Golden Valley has been given it the longest. So it's fairly accurate. One of the activities that we're working on with our feeder schools is to have the 8th grade teachers in the room with our teachers when they're grading the diagnostic test. So one, the recommendation and the placement is done right there. But 2, the feeder school teachers really get an idea of what our teachers are looking for, and that will begin some good vertical alignment of standards and calibrating for the expectations of what our teachers are going to demand of students that are coming in as 9th graders.
Thank you.
Can you talk us through the different levels of math? So what's the lowest class?
Right now, currently, the lowest math is integrated A. We also have financial algebra that we offer in some instances to some of our students.
And what if someone doesn't meet the standards to start at one of those levels?
Right now, that's where they have to start, and that's really the disparity. We want to meet students where they are, and by creating a system where we push into an integrated 1 class, we reduce the class sizes, but we support those students with additional supports, much, again, like what we're doing with Read 180, that students will be successful. However, we also realize, and we're very realistic, that we do have students that come that are very, very low. That's why we're piloting this new class. Eventually, what we would like to do, ideally, is to get rid of integrated A completely. So you're coming in, you're either going to go into integrated 1 with a lot of support, or you're going to have to go into a new class. We'll call it Math 180 just for the sake of argument. And we're going to try to get you caught up as soon as we can so that you can get into the other side of the math pathway. So that's the lowest that we have. Integrated 1, integrated 2, integrated 3. Once we get to past integrated 3, there's statistics, there's pre-cal, there's data science, there's calculus, there are the Merced College courses. So really, once you hit that integrated 3 class, you've taken it. I mean, everything really opens up with what students can take.
And you talked earlier about A to G. If a student takes integrated 1 through 3, do they meet that?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so that's okay. Okay. I'm curious what the difference is between when you talked about the testing each quarter to see how students are. How is that different than their current assessment? right? If you're an integrated one, you have a test and you get a grade on it. Is this a different kind of a test?
It is a very different type of test because
Okay.
right now teachers get to pick and choose the standards, um, and they make up their own tests, quite frankly. This standardizes everything across the district so that we get a better indication of how students are doing, but more importantly, individual student growth. What we don't want to see are students regressing. What we want to see is create that baseline with that pretest of where students are at the very beginning, and then along the way begin to measure that growth. And we know sometimes they may start really strong, they may plateau, they may go down, but by the end we want to make sure that they're at a better place than when they've started.
And so is that an attempt to assess how well the student-centered instruction is working? Or what is the test designed to measure?
It's designed to ensure that all students are getting equal access, and we talk about tier 1 supports. That's number one. We need to ensure that all students are being measured the same in the same way using the same standards. So the essential standards is a tier 1 support or a tier 1 structure to ensure that we're providing the same to all students. So the assessment is just that, to support a tier 1 system for all students. So we want to make sure that all students are getting the same, and we want to make sure that students are making growth along the way.
Okay, so it's a standardization of math curriculum across the district.
That is correct.
Okay. I am a fan of a 3-year math requirement because I don't know that there can be too much math. And I'm not suggesting that every student needs to take calculus. I don't mean that at all, but I think if students come in and they're in a remedial math class, we need to keep them taking math. We need to keep sharpening that tool for them, because math is such an important part of everyday life. I can't think of too many jobs you can have where you don't really where you can get by without an understanding of math. My suggestion is not that any student needs to get to a particular level, but that they need the exposure. They need the constant learning of math. Nothing against science, but if we require 3 years of science and students are accomplishing that, it's mind-boggling to me that we can't teach them 3 years of math. That's my perspective on it. And if teachers and parents and students feel very differently, then I would definitely stand corrected. Maybe we need a committee or something to talk about this further. But our students are going out into the workplace or going on to college in some instances, and they're behind, or they just don't have some basic skills. And it's not just about math. It's being on time and just some general life skills. And for me, math falls in that category of a life skill that you need.
I did share some data with you, and maybe this is a good time to look at that. So currently 79% of our students, or 79% of our juniors, are enrolled in math. That's 2,275 of our students right now, our juniors, are enrolled in math, and that does not include an 8th period remedial math. The second bullet point there, 45% of our juniors have met 20 units or 2 years of a math requirement and are enrolled in a 3rd year of math. Okay, that's 45%. 35% of our junior class is currently remediating math. That's 969. 7%, 185 of our current seniors have not met their math requirement for graduation of 20 credits. And then, more importantly to me, 42% of our seniors currently have 30 plus units of math. So I'll pose the question, is what we're trying to solve, around skills, or is it about something else?
Well,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about what you said about exposure and kind of keeping, maybe the skills a little fresher, and that might even include maybe a financial literacy type, course. That might not be specific maybe to a traditional course, but it's pulling in some of those mathematical life skills.
I think that's an outstanding idea.
And so it kind of hits maybe both.
Yeah. I
There
think
is.
that senior seminar, or whatever we call it, financial
Seminar.
literacy, where it's how to pay your taxes, your rent, establish your credit, those are life skills, math skills. They're so important for
It's the
people.
math you're going to use.
It's the math.
every day.
It is 100%. So that's where I'm like, we just want our kids to graduate and be able to, not get in debt immediately, and know how to pay their bills, and also be able to budget for themselves, and then take those skills into their workplace and apply them accordingly.
We do need more electives for seniors, for sure. And last board meeting, you heard from our senior seminar teachers and how successful that financial literacy section that Mr. DeSalvo had put together. So if I'm hearing you correctly, something that you are interested in exploring is another opportunity for students to get financial literacy in a class. Is that?
100%. Yeah. And whether you call that a math class or an elective, or, that's not the point. However, what we need to do is help our kids. Any other comments?
I have Mrs. Ham, just a comment that I want people to hear on the benchmarks when we use that phrase. That brings up, well, I guess in some it probably brings up some good feelings of the past. But I would say most don't appreciate that phrase. And I just want to be clear that what we're talking about here is measuring student growth, and this is a formative assessment that is for the teacher. It is not for the district office to look at and then put in a spreadsheet and measure Atwater High School against Merced High School. That's not how this is going to go. It's a snapshot in time on how a student is doing with the essential standards that are expected to be taught across this district by all teachers, and that's it. And then we go to the next quarter and we do the same thing. And I would not be surprised, and we have to be careful here, when we talk about student-centered instruction and we give a multiple choice test, how are you going to answer that one? So, we have this movement toward the 4 C's that we are absolutely not going to lose momentum on, because our graduates having the skills necessary to be successful in whatever their life choice is most important. So there is a balance that was talked about, but we are keeping that conversation very much in front of us. And I just want to make it clear that when we say these things, we're not talking about anything similar to the past. It's going to be much, much different.
I just had one other comment too. I really appreciated when Mrs. Cope talked about setting high expectations, and I think COVID has allowed us to really drop them, and we want our kids to know that we believe in them, and they can do this, and they can achieve at a higher level than they think possible. and a third year of math or life support. Financial algebra sounds amazing. I mean, that's kids need to be able to do those simple things. I have $10. How much gas can I put in my tank, right? How far can I drive? Anyway, thank you, Dr. Aguilar.
Thank you.
Mrs. Chambers, thank you for your patience.
All right. Hi, good evening, Merced Union High School Board of Trustees. My name is Mylea Moore Chambers. I am a parent of a sophomore at Merced High, and I'm here today because I have some concerns about the math curriculum and modality of what is being used at Merced Union High School. This week, I had a meeting with my child's math teacher and counselor about these concerns, specifically the modality and the use of computers to do math. And I'm referring to this because they referred to me that the curriculum that they are using are the decisions from the district on the curriculum and the modality. Let me give you a bird's eye view of what my child is experiencing for this year's math curriculum. Tests are consisted of 60% of my child's entire quarter grade. Furthermore, tests and quizzes are combined together are 75% of my child's grade. I have observed and watched my student, who is in Advanced Integrated Math 2, struggle with countless hours of finishing Mathia modules that are entirely online or computer-based. If you are to finish a module, you are then to take a quiz on the module. And oftentimes these quizzes do not give you the answers. They do not give you what questions you got wrong. It's just sometimes purgatory for them. And you often have to redo these modules again until you finish or that you get 70% or higher. Sometimes I even have heard kids take 2 weeks to finish a module because they just aren't able to finish that. In addition, assessments that my child specifically has had in her class has made her have high anxiety. She has woken up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning just to study so that she can do well on her exams. She is not allowed as a policy from her classroom to retake a test that she wanted to retake because she knew that she did horribly on it, but she wanted to put in that effort, and she was not allowed to at all. In addition, her expectations are that she is to have 60 Mathia lessons done per semester. And the module of how you are to take these exams, these tests, it's a one choice, and you are not able to go back and fix your grade or check your exam. Unlike the CAS test, you actually are able to go and take a look at what you did and fix your grade or fix your answers. You are not able to do this for her test. And so I am asking you to have a balance on what is expected for our children, because she is spending countless hours, and this is not just me. This is an anecdotal thing that I have talked to people on school site councils that have said specifically that their child has had a love for math, and it has extinguished because of the way that it is being taught at the schools. And the idea that the test of what is expected of them is mainly the largest portion of what they will be expected for their grade. And so I'm asking you to balance that out, because it is not consistent with how much effort that they are really putting into it. And my time is up, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Superintendent goals.
Mrs. Cope.
Good evening. We have a presentation. That's okay. The Prezi, yep, that one. All right. Miguel and I had an understanding of how we were going to roll in and out of this Prezi, but Cheryl and I we're gonna figure it out. So good evening. Good evening again. We're going to talk about MTSS, the update here, specifically to El Capitan. So Cheryl, if you can roll into superintendent goal number 4, please. And let's go to where it says goal number 4. Yep. So I did change these to black earlier. Leslie's my witness that they did update. So when we talk about MTSS, we're going to talk about a variety of things. Cheryl, go ahead and roll out of that because it's difficult to see. There we go. Yeah. So of course you guys have heard many MTSS presentations from different sites, and we look at our tiered structure from tier 1 where we're supporting all students, to tier 2 where we're supporting a larger portion of students, and then, a smaller portion of students, and then tier 3 where we're reaching the most severe or the smallest number of students. Cheryl, go ahead and roll out for me, please. And let's go to school-wide expectations, please. So our school-wide expectations, some of the things that we are doing here directly align. There are vision and mission, where I've talked earlier a lot about our maxims. Cheryl, can you roll into vision and mission, please? Thank you. Okay, so we're committed to developing 21st century learners. Our vision is to learn, love, lead, and leave a legacy. Of course, that's our maxim, and that's what we have been focusing everything around. Cheryl, if you can roll out. And then go up to Character Strong. So Character Strong is something that we have been implementing at a much higher level this year. We have purchased the curriculum and also the Character Strong gym, and that has been something that we have actually been doing with our staff as well, just so they can see samples of how that works, so that they're more confident in providing those lessons in their classrooms. Right now, the expectation is that our freshman seminar classes and our health classes do consistent Character Strong lessons, as well as all of our other levels of English. Cheryl, if you can roll out for me, please. We have, and then you don't need to roll into MUHSD must-haves, but we are following along with the 4 C's, student-centered learning, and one of the big things that we're going to be working on next year is combining the 4 C's and our maxims and building those together to then help build our Gaucho game plan, which is in essence our 6-year plan. Cheryl, if you roll out for me, please. All right, let's go to academic, behavior, and social emotional. So in this area, we have 3 different areas that we're going to talk about, and we'll go into the academics. One more time. All right, so it's these are all the different components to our academics. We've got our MUHSD must-haves, our standards-based curriculum, student engagement, student-centered learning, our 4 C's, and our Gaucho game plan, which I talked about. So all of these pieces together are really our main focus when it comes to academic success. Cheryl, if you roll out, and then let's go into behavior or social emotional. So some of the things with social emotional, one of the things we've recently started is Wellness Wednesdays. So Wellness Wednesdays, during the morning announcements, we add a component of something to destigmatize mental health. So this month's theme has been resiliency. So we've been providing little tidbits about how do you become resilient? What are the 4 things? And it actually worked out perfectly because there's 4 C's to resiliency. So we were able to tie that into our 4 C's as well. We're doing lots of different things with social emotional support. Our counselors have been a huge part of that, including our SSM and our Sierra Vista counselor as well, just making sure that we provide those supports to students and identify them early. And then behavioral, go one more time. So there's a variety of things on here that contribute to our MTSS when it comes to behavior, and you guys have heard lots of those pieces earlier, so I'm not going to go into great detail about that, but what I can say is that there's so many different things that we're doing, and one of the things I do want to highlight is specifically our Assets for Life, our restorative justice after school, where we actually bring students together. One of the things that we've actually been working on is we've had some different groups on campus who have had a history of not liking each other. So we've done restorative justice with the groups individually, and we are now bringing those 2 groups together to restore that relationship and get past some of the historical issues there. Cheryl, go ahead and roll out for me one more time, and one more time. back out. One more. Nope, wrong way. Mm-hmm. We'll go back out to home. There we go. Okay, let's go into high quality instruction. So there's lots of different things that we're doing for high quality instructions. We're getting our walkthroughs done pretty consistently. I think at this point, most of our admin team have done over about 150 walkthroughs. I've specifically asked our APs over student support to do discipline walkthroughs as well. So they're following up in the classroom on students that have maybe visited the discipline office recently, which the teachers have very much appreciated when they see them come in for that as well. One of the things I did this year, just having a new admin team, is I wanted to do a book study. So we focused on The Hard Hat, which is very light read that everyone can finish pretty quickly, but it's kind of went along with our Rebuilding the Legacy theme, and that was a lot of fun talking about teamwork and what that looks like. So we also have calibration walks where our admin go together around campus to make sure that we are all identifying DOKs correctly, MUHSD must-haves correctly, that the feedback that we're giving teachers is calibrated and consistent, so that if I'm walking into a teacher's room and 2 periods later another admin walk in, that the message that they should be getting from us is consistent. And so we do calibration walks. Also, we have discussions weekly about our walks as an admin team to make sure that we're looking for themes. Where are teachers struggling? Where do we need to focus our professional development? So that's one of the ways we gather information on what supports do we need. Do we need to work on warm-ups? Do we need to work on exit slips? Things like that. Let's see what else. Okay, we can roll out of that. And let's go to screening and monitoring, please. I feel like I'm on Jeopardy. Screening and monitoring for 200. Thank you. Let's go in one more time, I think. I put some. There we go. Okay, so screening and monitoring, this is something we've also been working strongly on. And this is where I spoke earlier a little bit about our SSTs. And so we actually created a system that our SSTs, when a referral is submitted, it alerts the counselor, the AP of guidance, me, or it includes a discipline or an AP over student support if it's behavior related. So that way multiple people are aware that an SST has been put in for a student. We all have a form so we can see when it was submitted, when the contact to schedule the meeting was, when it will be held, and when it's scheduled for. We also send home weekly DNF notices to parents so that they are aware if their child is at risk of failing. That's important to us because we don't like to have a parent surprised at semester that, oh, by the way, all of a sudden your child has a poor grade. So we're trying to keep parents in the loop, making sure that they're aware of what's going on with their kiddo. We're working on an ECHS MTSS website, and so I actually started that process over at Golden Valley, but then I accepted this job. So I've kind of passed that on to Brandon Sanchez, and we've morphed it into an El Capitan website, which is very exciting, and it's very specific to our site and the interventions that teachers can do in their classroom that look gaucho, that look like El Capitan. And we're also using Panorama. And so one of the things we do is we screen our Panorama results, and from there we work with kids that may be at risk. So the image in the middle there is really basically a visual just to show you that it's all these different pieces, all these different people coming together to support that whole student.
Can you explain a Panorama real quick?
So Panorama is a survey that we give throughout the course of the year, and it's basically kind of like a check-in with students, kind of getting a temperature check on their kind of overall well-being. And from that, we get a list of results based on their answers. And so from that, we've identified a staff member who actually goes through that information and looks for students who might be at risk. And when that happens, we call them in, we talk with them, have a check-in, see where they're at, and then we filter them out to the appropriate resources that they may need. And Cheryl, the last one, please, I believe is benchmarking. All right, we talked a little bit about this with math, so I'm not going to go too much into that, but there are lots of different ways that we're benchmarking throughout the year. We're doing our reading inventory. We've already done it several times this year. I kind of talked about Panorama, which is almost like a benchmark for social emotional well-being. We have our essential standards, our interim assessments, and we use Edulastic and Mathia, where it's a way that teachers can get in and see how students are doing, and then check for check for how they're doing on their academic progress. Do you guys have any questions?
Do you have a read on your DNF rate yet?
Our DNF rate is actually surprisingly lower than I anticipated, just because I've done that at previous schools. I don't have specific numbers off the top of my head, but we do kind of see a trend where the beginning of the year we don't really see them, and we see an increase coming into the end of quarter one. I think that kind of sends a message to students that, hey, get it in gear. But by the end of the semester, we start to see some of those D's and F's really improve. I think students really understand that, oh boy, credit is assigned at the end of the semester. I better get that passing grade.
Thank you.
As an anecdote on that, I think I heard that for a football game this year, there was a school that had a very, very small roster because they had so many kids with D's and F's, and that LCAP sent their kids to study instead of to the field to make sure that that didn't happen. So,
Yes.
kudos.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They're students first.
Very good. Very good. What does DOK mean?
Depth of knowledge.
Okay.
So it's, in fact, we did a training, so it's kind of like the level of knowledge that students are digging into when they're in class. So level 1 is very basic kind of recall types of learning, whereas when you get to a DOK 4, it's very, very deep understanding of the material. And so we actually did a training with our classified staff where we took the DOK levels and we actually reworked it for relationships, and we talked about having very limited knowledge of students as a DOK 1 and getting to know them and understand them as a DOK 4. And so we've really kind of streamlined that with, so we talk about DOK with our certificated, we also talk about it with our classified and how important it is to increase our DOK level across the board.
How has the participation rate been in Saturday Academy?
Our Saturday Academy is definitely an area of needed growth. Quite frankly, we do lots of wonderful things at El Capitan, but I'm not gonna lie, there's lots of things that we can continue to improve on, and Saturday Academy is one of those items. And we just do not have the turnout that we wish we had, and I think a lot of that has to do with our location for Saturday Academy and just our demographic, geographical area where our students come from. And so I think transportation from the other side of town over here for a couple of hours is very challenging, and we do have staff that will go pick up students, but we have vans. We don't have, it's not like a whole school bus that has routes and things like that. So we've been looking at ways to improve that, and one of the things that we've thought about is how could we utilize a facility on the south side of Merced to offer a Saturday Academy to students that are in that neighborhood.
Great idea.
Yeah, great idea.
So you're describing a transportation issue from Southside Merced here to get kids here. Has there been a survey done as far as kid interest on wanting to attend Saturday Academy, and what do those numbers tell you?
So transportation is one issue,
Right.
interest is another. And no, we haven't done a survey, but that's a great suggestion of something that we could do to find out how interested students are. I was just talking with our Saturday Academy lead today about trying to get an increase in teachers to participate, and then also find ways to come up with student interest. And so what we talked about today is actually at our next faculty meeting. I'm going to give her a chunk of time where she can come up with some ideas and talk to teachers about, hey, this is something you can offer. So you might be an English teacher, but maybe you are offering something that is enrichment with, some English built into it, some different activities that might just entice students to come.
And I bring that up because funding is not an issue,
No,
obviously.
funding is not the
then
issue.
if we can find a way to get kids here, with the ELOT monies, and then obviously the expanded learning opportunities monies that are out there,
Yeah.
the money is there to support students, especially from the south side, that want to participate, and the opportunities are there for them. So.
Yeah, and I am open to ideas. That's one of the things that we do need to tackle as a team here, is we need to figure out ways to get more kids involved on the weekends, find things that interest them, and then also make it more accessible.
Thank
And
you.
Open gyms and weight rooms and things like that too sometimes help in addition to the classroom.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, what I was going to say is it's a culture, and it takes time. And certainly having the neighborhood folks in the area, the neighborhood school, helps that participation. But we can certainly help with transportation if that's information you find out.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a very open-ended discussion, the rest of this report. So just let it flow. We have a little bit of organization to get it started. I just want to remind the board that, you know, I think we all agree that we have a very solid and strong vision for our students. Students leaving us with a diploma, CTE experience, and college credit on their transcript. We have worked really hard to develop something that didn't exist, and that's the CTE program, at least outside of ag. And it's almost easier to develop something that doesn't exist. Ask any builder. So now, as we kind of look at that diploma area, it's the conversation for the last couple of years has been, how do we increase the quality of that? How do we make that part better and stronger? So as we talk today, we may come to some consensus for next year. We may not. It may take us into January. But at any rate, it's the beginning of that conversation of what we are going to focus on for next year. And Mr. Weimer is going to give you a little background data.
So I will walk us through. I will walk us through the data pieces here. So just a reminder here as we start, this is the Merced Union High School District Vision. Every student will walk off the graduation stage with a diploma in one hand and CTE certification proficiency in the other, along with college credit on their transcripts. So following that, here is our 2021 data for graduation rates, 94.6% compared to 87.7% for the statewide average. You can then see the various subgroups, demographic groups below that with socioeconomically disadvantaged status being about 80% of our students. So you'll see that that number pretty much for us matches our overall rate, and our socioeconomic rate is pretty much the same because that's a large portion of our students, but you can see for the state it actually falls down there. So if you compare our students to similar students, we're doing even better than we do when you just compare us to the state as a whole. We do have the 22 information. It is embargoed, so I cannot provide that for you at this particular time. It will be out shortly, but the numbers don't change very much. The one thing that does look good when we look at the 22 rate is the African American rate, which is at 86% here, which is below our average, bounces up almost to our average, right around 90, 92% when you see next year's. But I didn't say that out loud in the public meeting. Merced High School did slip below 95%, so they're our only comprehensive site that did that. That happened during COVID. They have not yet bounced back up over that. All the other comprehensive sites are over 95%. We did have BUHAC at 99.1, so that was a wonderful piece there, and we had Livingston at 99% the year before that. Comprehensive sites have very few, if any, who are there during their senior year and do not graduate. So the few students who are making up that graduation rate and not being 100%, usually they disappear in their freshman to sophomore year over the summer, or their sophomore to junior year in the summer. It's not that they're sitting there at the end of their senior year and not finishing a class to graduate. It's very few of those students. We do have at all ed those students who do not graduate at that particular point. So if we want to look at our graduation rate as a whole, you're looking at dropouts who disappear at comp sites. You are looking at students who don't graduate as seniors if you're looking at our alt ed sites. So those would be two different scenarios depending on which group you want to look at. CTE certification is not a state reported piece of information at this time. They're working on it, but we'll see how long it takes them to get that in place. So this is from our own data. The class of 22 had 822 seniors, which is about 30.6%, who earned 2,220 certifications. And so those are reported by our teachers and tracked in our system. For college credit, this is used as part of our CCI, so this is one of those things that is tracked. For the class of 22, 469 seniors, about 17.5% completed, 1,943 course credits. The CCI has been suspended through 2024, so it's hard for us to make comparison to any other group, even though this is reported and it is tracked as part of the CCI. We don't get other people's CCI because it's suspended right now from the state. I know Mr. Aguilar has mentioned that there is some issues with our data, and so we are working to make sure that everything is clean and that everything actually gets reported the correct way, so that when we do provide those to the state, that we do get good, clean data. So hopefully those numbers will go up a little bit as we clean up that data. Other data for the dashboard, and again, I said the CCI is suspended, so that tracks our pathways and some of our other data. Suspension rate, this is from unduplicated students. So for Merced Union High School District and the state, it's pretty much not worth looking at 2021 data because nobody was in school, or they were there for part of the time and not other parts of the time, and so you see really small numbers across there. If you go to 21-22, we're at 3.1% of our students had received a suspension if you compare that to the state average, which is 3.4, and the county average, which was a 4.7. So you do see we're pretty much aligned with where everybody else is at that particular one. Expulsion rate at most sites is similar to the county average at about 0.26. The state average is 0.07. But a few larger incidents did pull the district rate closer to a 0.7. And demographic breakdowns are not yet available, so I can't tell you subgroups on that particular information yet. We do have the test scores down at the bottom then, which is the CASP for ELA. Merced Union High School District is at 40.8%. The number in parentheses is our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, so that's about 80% of our population. For the state, met and exceed was 47%, so you see the gap there, about 7 points in the overall rating. But if you look at the socioeconomically disadvantaged, we pretty much match the state. So in similar students, we match, but when you take the state as a whole, we fall a little bit behind. Math, you can see the numbers there as well, the 12.5 to 9.2, and the state at 33.4 and 21.2, and we've already had a conversation on the math for today. But one of the things you do notice is our A through G rate is about 30.6. Those are students who already take 3 years of math as part of their requirement to meet that A through G requirement. If that group of students were to actually meet requirements, we would be at the state average. English learners, the state reported data is the LPAC assessment, and so they take that every year to see whether their progress is. Merced Union High School District had a 45.7 making progress. The state was at 50.3. We were actually, before COVID, we were right above the state, so we were at about the 51%, where the state was still at about 50.3. 32.9% stayed at the same level, which is levels 1 to 3. When reviewing the other data for EL, such as when you're comparing it to graduation rates or when you're looking at test scores or those types of things, one of the things we do need to remember that as soon as a student becomes proficient as an EL student, what do? We reclassify them and they're no longer EL. So the group that is left is who you are comparing. So everybody, as soon as you get ready to be even with everybody else, we no longer call you EL. So you kind of have to remember that when you look at those comparisons. By nature, EL is going to always tend to be lower because as soon as they would qualify where everybody else is, you reclassify them and don't call them EL students anymore. And then we have college attendance rates. So for the class of 2020, we had a college going rate of about 63.6%, which is right about at the average of 64.2 for the state. And then again, you can see the demographic breakdowns for that particular information. And you can see in 2018 and 2019, that number was a little bit higher. So you did see it drop across the state as COVID hit. And hopefully over the next year or two, we will start getting those numbers back up, both us and the state, on those comparisons. One of the interesting things that I did see that I might spend some more time on a little bit later is when I was looking at the 4-year rate versus the 2-year rate, there seems to be, and again I'm saying seems, I can't prove this at this particular point, there seems to be a distance factor which affects the 4-year versus 2-year rates. The schools that are closer to Stanislaus have a higher number of students who drive to Stanislaus, therefore get a 4-year school. And Merced and Golden Valley have a higher number of people who will drive to Merced College because it's closer and don't go to Stanislaus, and so they have a higher 2-year rate and a lower 4-year rate, which is a little bit interesting to see that the difference between a 4-year and a 2-year rate would be how close you are to the place and how long it takes you to drive there. So that's something we want to take a look at and see if that's actually at play. And that was it for the data. I can answer questions if you have any on that. I know that was a whole lot to throw at you. But there will be a test.
Dr. Weimer, I apologize if I missed this, but reclassification rates. I mean, do you have any idea how many students we reclassify once they get to us? Or how many, or what percentage of our 9th graders are coming in as ELs, and then what percentage do we reclassify?
I can't give you that right off the top of my head. We'd actually have to do a little bit more data dive into that, and I am going to probably volunteer Dr. Austin over there to give me a hand in doing some of that, because we would like to take a look. Pretty much we have to remember ELs is not a single population. There's pretty much 3 groups within the population. There's those who've been with us for less than 4 years. They're moving through the process to be reclassified in a reasonable amount of time. Then there are ELs who are also special education. That's another group of students who have special needs. And then you have EL students who have been 6 years or more in the program, which actually is the large majority of our students who are EL is that particular group. So taking a look at those 3 different groups and basically looking at what's working, what's not working in each of those groups is something we'd like to take a look at. But you'll notice, if I find the right one, the number of students who come to us as 9th graders who are in that lower group and have not been reclassified is about 100 students higher than our senior class. So it kind of indicates that in that first year, it goes from 300 to about 220 and then down to 200. So you do see a drop usually between their freshman year and their sophomore year. So it probably is a significant number. We can get that for you, but that number kind of indicates that we do, within a year, reclassify a good number of students.
Okay, thank you.
And the Valley and our district in particular does have a much higher RFEP rate than the rest of the state of California, almost double.
Okay, thank you.
And I will punt the rest of this to whoever.
Well, this is a list of Cabinet's recommendations for next year, and we can go through each one and give our rationale. I think MTSS, Viviana, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead there. You go right ahead. And then Christy, you're up next.
Can you hear me? Yeah, there. Good evening, board members. So I'm going to give you guys a quick overview of how the communications department really worked towards the superintendent goal, which was that 2-way communication. And this is kind of an update of where we're at. We have definitely taken a lot of action steps, especially this school year now that we're in person, to continuously work meeting with school site administration. So I have made the initiative I have almost sat down with every school site principal to review their site-specific communications plan. This is something they work with their admin team and also the director of student life, their activities director, to basically make sure that they're using Parent Square, their school site council meetings, how they're documenting engagement, and also how they're receiving feedback. So as you heard, like from Principal Cope, they're doing a great job. I get those emails as well. Every time an email gets sent out to students to survey a student population, I'm getting that as well and making sure that, they are consistently communicating with students, with parents, with community members.
And hopefully at the end of the school year, we'll be able to measure outcomes and evaluate those surveys. We're going to continue refining methods of the two-way communication to be proactive and responsive in any variety of formats and languages at each school site. I think one way that I have taken initiative for languages, especially to reach our Hispanic population, is to make sure that MUHSD Minutes is in Spanish, and there is a survey for parents to fill out in Spanish. So I'm making sure that I'm collecting feedback from that population, which is, you know, over 70% of our population is Hispanic. So making sure that's inclusive as well. I'm making sure when I send out a parent score notification, you know, making sure that we are answering any emails, any concerns, and continuing what has been working, which is coffee with the superintendent, and just documenting and making sure that we're evaluating each school site where they're at and making sure they're growing, and just to continue to look how to evolve that plan and look for new opportunities to engage all stakeholders. So therefore, I recommend that we close that goal, and I will continue to provide updates when needed.
Okay, thank you, Christy. Okay.
Go ahead. No, I'll read Torrance. Well, I was saying, since you're up there.
Sure.
So one of the goals that we would like to look at is improving special education services for students, and we have 4 subcategories under there. We'd like to look at professional development on co-teaching, which is when a special education teacher delivers instruction alongside of a general education teacher. Development of a learning skills curriculum. That's a class that almost all of our special education students take, and right now they use it to mostly work on homework, so we'd like to have a district-wide curriculum where they're working on various topics. The other one is professional development for special day class teachers on lesson planning and delivery. And finally, case management expectations and best practices for how to document and support IEP implementation.
Thank you.
How many students does that impact district-wide?
Approximately 1,200.
And staff?
Maybe around 45.
Okay.
But with the co-teaching, I think we impact more than special education students. We also impact struggling general education students in a classroom.
And does that involve paras in the process as well?
It would, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I like it.
Next, MTSS. I'm pinch hitting for Mr. Johnson this evening. If you recall, our MTSS areas are school-wide expectations or maxims. You've heard that term here this evening, which is our vision for readiness or identity. Grad profile is another term. Academics, behavior, and social emotional, explicitly teaching all appropriate behaviors in those areas. Also, high-quality instruction. You've heard that talk to us about the 4 C's. Benchmarking or local assessments in the math area, and then also screening and monitoring, which is identifying early warning systems or support plans for students. We will have to revise our implementation rubric timeline based on the principal's self-evaluation on MTSS implementation. So those areas that I just mentioned, principals all rated themselves as still developing. In all 5 categories, the principals rated themselves on average as developing, which is exactly where we are and where we should be. Our initial timeline was too aggressive because an MTSS implementation is anywhere from 5 to 7 years. Ours was 3. Next steps will include ideation sessions, further discussion on implementation, and looking for gaps or opportunities within the systems at the principal seminar in February. The sites are to be commended for their efforts to date. Implementing MTSS at the high school level is extremely difficult because of the very nature of high school, bell schedules, graduation credits, and those types of things. So that is our MTSS report. Next, with counseling. Counseling teams have met with Hatching Results trainers for 2 full days of professional development, with 4 more days scheduled this spring. Hatching Results visited 3 sites in September for a combined 7 hours, seeing campuses, touring counseling offices, and engaging in classroom observation. Our work with Hatching Results has guided us in developing a framework for expanding Tier 1 counseling curriculum and refining program calendars and MTSS-aligned counseling interventions. Our trainers and counseling teams explore data-driven counseling programs, and across our next visits in January and May, we hope to further expand on our team's capacity to interact with data and drive counseling interventions via direct services across all tiers. One of the biggest pieces of learning for me, and you heard me say this term direct services, there is a big difference between direct services and indirect services. Direct services, I'm directly in front of a student, right, providing services. Indirect, me sitting in front of a computer, emailing, sending a message home, doing paperwork around IEP or other things. So there is a difference between the two. Our focus is direct services, where our counselors are in front of students. Hatching Results trainers have met with the counseling leadership team and counseling department chairs on multiple occasions to co-develop our professional learning plan tailored to the specific needs of our programs. This was a big ask from our counseling teams, that they wanted to be they wanted a seat at the table and wanted to ensure that they had a voice as we were developing this work. So we have done that. And lastly, our counseling programs have begun to develop our comprehensive counseling program handbook that, when complete, will serve as a resource and guide for our counselors and administrators, as well as all educational groups, to have a clear understanding of all the services that our students receive. That's it for me. I'll hand it over to Ms. Furman to talk about English, unless you'd like for me to talk more about math.
I think they're probably mathed out for
No,
now.
I actually have a question about math. Can you
Okay.
talk about Mathia a little bit? And as the parent spoke this evening, what exactly she was referencing? It sounded like her student was teaching herself online, and so I'm a little confused.
Yeah, I did give the parent my card, and I asked her to email me so we can connect, and I will reach out to her tomorrow. Mathia is an online program that is supplemental to instruction. It is supposed to supplement in the sense that if a student is low in an area, the teacher is supposed to assign additional work to try to raise the student's levels. It is not meant to be strictly only that curriculum. It is a support for students to catch up on their learning or fill in some gaps that they have. Yep.
And I believe Mrs. Berman is new to the board. Have you met Mrs. Berman? Is this your first presentation? Mrs.
Yes, it's my first. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Oh, you will do great. Mrs. Berman is a program manager and handling English, among other things.
So good evening, Board President Ham, board members. I'm Superintendent Peterson, Cabinet, and Ms. Rohrbach. Like Mr. Peterson said, my name's Kim Berman. I'm our district literacy coach. So about 3.5 months into this job so far, it is new. Working with Director Johnson and Dr. Aguilar, we could have 3 possible foci around English. And the first one is around Read 180, which is our reading intervention program. So over the past several months, we've been working on implementation since it's new. We're going to continue that throughout the rest of the year. Next year, we could focus on student growth specifically. So luckily, this curriculum and platform gives us data that we can use to create measurable goals. Those goals are individualized for each student in the class. Most of the students that are currently in a Read 180 class across the district scored in the below basic range for their reading proficiency level, and that's based on the diagnostic we give district-wide that a few different people have referred to tonight as the reading inventory. So that's a diagnostic that measures reading comprehension. It produces a Lexile, which basically tells us what grade level that our students read. So most of our students right now are in that below basic range, which means that we can expect them to grow based on our partnership with the program. 165 to 240 Luxile points, which equates to about 1 grade level. And that's by the end of a school year. So that can be an area to focus on. Next year would be tracking that growth and encouraging students to achieve that growth, because that's obviously what we want, is for them to improve in their reading. The second area would be in the core curriculum. So right now, within English, we are following the path that math has forged over the past year and a half, which is the adoption of a new curriculum. So we're in that review process right now with English departments across the district. We also will need to focus on training for all teachers involved in that curriculum. And then, as well as revisiting our essential standard work and creating common assessments that align with those standards to measure growth. Thirdly, an area of writing. We have begun to discuss creating a system that conveys basic expectations around reading skills. So in the formative phases, for sure, but knowing that that's an area of need. So that's it.
Did a great job, Mrs. Berman.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Can you talk a little bit about the growth of the students in Read 180?
Sure. What specifically?
Well, you have some anecdotal data that has showed growth this semester.
Yes. I wish I could give you some firm numbers, but the data is preliminary. I did run some reports today and over the past week, but our testing window actually ends tomorrow. So on Friday, I would be able to give you some great firm data surrounding that. But we have seen growth. For example, I did look at 9th graders specifically, because that is the grade level we are currently offering Read 180. At Golden Valley, they do have a couple sections of 10th grade as sort of a pilot, but focusing really on those 9th grade students in that below basic range. I saw that on average, 9th graders grew in Luxile anywhere from 35 to about 65 points, which equates to about half of a grade level, which is great, really great. So that was on average again, and I was just looking at 9th grade. But then just again, anecdotally, I was visiting a school the other day, and the teacher caught me in the hallway and said, I already gave the reading inventory, I already ran my reports, I already looked at my data, and I believe she told me 87% of her students grew in some way. So that could be little growth, and there was some major growth in there too.
Is
So
that
that's-
over a semester, or in what time period are we talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, the implementation started when school started this year, but I would say in all fairness, in adjusting to a new curriculum and all of its nuances, most teachers would probably say that they truly consistently began implementing the program probably in mid-September. So not even a full semester.
Wow.
Yeah. But again, that's preliminary data, and some teachers are still giving that reading inventory tomorrow, because that is the last day of finals. So there are many students actually that we still need reporting on.
Is there a committee of teachers involved in developing the new curriculum?
The core curriculum for English. So Dr. Aguilar has been meeting monthly with English department heads, along with Director Johnson, myself, and I believe APs of TNL are in those meetings as well. They are the ones receiving the information, kind of disseminating the information, and then all English teachers have been involved in this review process. So basically from probably early September to now, all of the potential publishers have been narrowed down to 3. So they are currently reviewing 3 potential publishers. They all have input in it. They've all been given demo accounts for all 3, so they can go onto those demo accounts at their leisure on their own time, and they can explore those. I am also taking samples to every site, so we're calling it kind of a road show, just for fun. And so I've completed 3 of those as of today, and the teachers are coming before school, on their prep period, after school, and those conversations have been really good. They're asking questions, they're exploring the potential curriculum, they are providing feedback on sort of where they're leaning, and then that will ultimately result in a vote.
And is there a new style of teaching involved in this curriculum growth as well?
So all three publishers, I think it's probably a win-win situation, focus on the student-centered approach. And so there's a whole group learning component, which still, that direct instruction piece still takes place. There's a built-in structure for small group and collaborative learning, and there's also a built-in structure for independent learning. So making sure that the students can complete it on their own, as well as they can complete it in a small group, as well as they can complete it in a teacher-led environment.
Thank you.
Comments? Or
Well, as you see, we are requesting that one is removed and that we add two. And we also have another page that had various board member and staff comments on it, which is next. That's where we are. I'll leave it up to you.
I just have one comment on the previous screen regarding the math and the English and the programs, and just kind of, I think going back to what I mentioned before, is just that balance between, how those programs are intended to be used and how they may actually be used. And also thinking about, the comment that we had earlier. I think we see it sometimes in classrooms, and some of us have experienced it as a parent as well. And just making sure that we're cognizant of that, and that we're trying to create that so that they are being used not in replacement of the teacher, but in collaboration with the teacher. Otherwise, I'm good with that.
One thing I wrestle with is I just would really like for us to make sure we have measurable metrics associated with every goal. And they could be simple things like 100% implementation of the curriculum, or, a certain number of trainings. Or I really appreciated the data that Mrs. Cope shared today about the number of student interventions and who those were with, and the growth between last year. I mean, the numbers are so tangible and measurable, and yeah, you can, kudos to El Capitan for what they've accomplished. And I think that's what we need, so that we know we are making positive progress, and not just we said, we did this. Well, how did we do it? How do we measure it? How do we know it's successful? So that's one thing I would ask for when we vote on these, I guess, is a metric that we can put on our dashboard. Not just that this is the goal, but this is the measurement that will determine whether or not we're successful, knowing that we may pick the wrong number and we may have to pivot and change and, do the right thing, but have something measurable to emphatically work towards.
Understood. Other topics that we wanted to discuss, not in any particular order there.
My thoughts, if I may. I don't want to overload the goals, because fewer, deeper, do them well. At some point, if not now, I'd like to see some emphasis on English learners, and what we're doing to, really help develop those students and reclassify them. The cybersecurity, my thoughts on that is, just education, staff student education, practices. And I think that's it as far as my comments on those.
Okay. I agree with Tiffany as far as a focus on our English learner progress. I believe in one of the sessions that we attended at the CSBA, about 80% or so of districts in the state of California did not have a goal in their LCAP specific to English learners. Obviously, with the presentation or the numbers that Dr. Weimer gave tonight, we're seeing that there is a need to better support our English learners and see them get reclassified. So I think at some point in time, through the LCAP process, we need to develop a goal, a goal, not an outcome, not a measure, not a metric. I mean, something specific that's going to say that our English learners are a focus, and we're going to help them achieve, academic proficiency in reading. So I'd like to see that work continue.
Okay.
Well, I've been pretty vocal about cell phones, so I'll own that. And I know that they are very, they interrupt the classroom, the opportunity for a teacher to pour into a student because students are distracted with their phones. We have policies. I don't know that they're enforced, and quite frankly, I don't think teachers really relish the idea of enforcing policies and taking cell phones away. They want to have positive interactions with students more than anything. So I've watched what I think it's Bullard High School did, and students put their phones in a packet that's locked at the beginning of the day, and every teacher has a place where a student can unlock their phone, but it is essentially locked other than during breaks and after school. I would love to see us at least explore something like that, maybe experiment with it, perhaps get a committee together that includes student, staff, and community members. Personal anecdote, my son is a freshman at Merced High, and he has Mr. Calzadias for culinary. And he got an F on one of his labs, and I asked, well, what in the world? Well, he had his cell phone out. And Mr. Calzadias said, if you have your cell phone out when you are cooking on the job, you will lose your job. You will get fired. So students are not allowed to have them during labs. And, that is what we're trying to teach kids, right? These real world experiences. And you can't have your cell phone out while you're on the job for the most part. Sometimes it is part of the job, and I understand sometimes it's part of instruction. But beyond the distraction that it is in the classroom, the mental health studies and everything around cell phones, I think the emphasis we've put on mental health, we should definitely have an education component of part of our counseling and our MTSS that is in there. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, and I think it needs to be fleshed out and have broader conversations with everyone that would be impacted by it. But I would love to see us just go deeper on this subject and figure out how we can support staff and students appropriately.
Any other board member have a comment on that before I comment? You're going to get no argument from the district office. I don't think you'll get any argument from the union. And I think that's something we can do fairly quickly, is get together and figure out how to push forward and have a policy that really makes staff feel like it has clarity and teeth and flexibility, because not everyone's the same.
And then the other one, and I don't know if athletics is on there, because I was suggesting that we make joining an athletic program, whether it's the band or a sport, a requirement for at least the first 2 years to fulfill the PE requirement. It's not just that you're in PE, but you're actually part of a program. And again, maybe this is part of MTSS and offering kids the opportunity to join and belong, which is the point. And we know kids do much better when they're part of something than when they're not. And again, just thinking about what happened here at this campus with the football team, and how they got those kids D's and F's turned around because they were part of something bigger. And going back to just life experiences, people who can get along with others and figure that out early on will do better when they leave our campuses. The one thing that's not up there that I would also like to touch on is vaping. we haven't heard about it a ton lately, and I don't know if that means that things are getting better on campuses, if it's being policed less, if we've given up. I don't know, but I think vaping is from what I understand, it's happening in classrooms, it's going unpunished, and it's continuing to be a distraction.
Christy, you want to comment on that? Mrs. Cope? Your campus?
Vaping is still an issue. There is a misconception that there's no consequences for that, though. So that is not true. We have pretty detailed outline steps of what we do when we catch students who are vaping. Mr. Johnson has been working with the RAFT program and with Mr. Leonardo over at our UDA program. And what we're finding is by the time the kids come to us, when they're vaping, they're addicted. And so just a simple education class that we're sending them to probably isn't going to fix that. So we're working right now on developing an MOU with RAFT so that we can get some treatment on campus for students who have an addiction problem.
One of the things I hear is that students are vaping in the classroom and teachers are either unaware or turning a blind eye. And again, it's one more thing that they don't really want to have to police. So I don't know what the solution is.
We did have our sheriff's department go, I think it was at MUHSD, they went and they did a drug education class for staff members, and so we're encouraging the other sites to do that because they're very sneaky, and the devices that they're vaping from are hard to detect, so we're trying to provide more education for staff so that we can be more on top of it.
Thank you. I agree with Tiffany that I don't think we want to overburden and dilute the effectiveness of the goals, so sticking to fewer is better.
And yeah, and we can come back to all of these things. I think essentially what you're saying around athletics, Mrs. Ham, is we want to push students to be involved as possible, and right off the bat in the 9th and 10th grade. And we will all agree there has been a drop-off. If you look at the percentages of athletic participation across the district, we are usually in the low to mid 40s, depending on the school. And I think, Mr. Calderon, are all schools under 40 right now?
Yes, I believe so.
So
we would love to be in the 60% range. Overall, I believe pre-pandemic we were nearing that 80% range between activities and athletics.
Well, yeah, that's with everything. Yeah. So, which means athletics was pushing up into the upper 40s. But that's our biggest intervention program is athletics. And I don't think anyone disagrees that we want to push our students to be involved, but I suppose the band parent or the band student would say that all the athletes need to be in band, right? So it really doesn't matter what it is, just be involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the science has proven that they achieve at higher levels the more they're involved. So we will stay on that. We've already actually talked about how to measure that in a better and more consistent way.
So I think the only one we didn't talk about was safety, and
that's Christy again.
Yeah.
Student discipline incidents peaked between September and October, but we seem to be in a decline. Safety committees are in place at every site, and meetings are at a minimum held quarterly to discuss trends and issues. Safety drills have been held at all sites. Principals were asked to review safety protocols with both certificated and classified staff. In addition, sites are using SICA to monitor who is on campus, and many sites are also using MINGA to monitor tardies and time out of class. The transition to the Sheriff's Department at Livingston, MUHSD, and Atwater High Schools has been very smooth. We are quite pleased with the service the department provides. They are extremely involved with our students and have provided staff education on drugs and gangs. Law enforcement agencies across the country and in our own area are struggling with staffing issues. Providing coverage when one of our SROs is out due to training or illness has been very difficult. MUHSD understands that when we have SROs out and we need coverage, we're often pulling a patrol officer off the streets. This is especially difficult for our law enforcement partners since calls for service are at an all-time high. The Sheriff's Department feels confident that if the Merced Union High School District can support the hiring of an additional SRO, that coverage would be increased at our sites when the regular SRO is out. This additional SRO would sub at not only Livingston, Atwater, and Buhack, but also at any Merced school when Merced PD cannot provide a substitute due to their staffing shortages. We think this would be an excellent solution to our coverage issues throughout the district, and we will discuss this more when we get ready to renew our contracts.
Go ahead.
These are all areas that are receiving some level of attention.
They are.
So, which would continue.
Yes, absolutely. These are, this last slide are general topics that I've heard from all of you at one time or another in the last couple of months.
Thank you for keeping track of us.
I try.
Chrissy, I would be a strong proponent of having all of our SROs be from the Sheriff's Department. We are one body, Merced Union High School District, and they are one. And I feel like it would be much easier for training, for support, all of it, if we had one contract district-wide.
I understand, and I think there's pros and cons to it. It's important to be attached to the agency that is attached to the community, so I think that's something to keep in mind. But I've also spoken to the sheriff, and they also don't think that they'd be able to find enough SROs to cover every school. They think they can get us one if we renew that contract and add an additional, but to find enough for every school would be extremely difficult.
Okay. When will we be renewing that contract?
I'd like to put that on January or February. The sheriff needs to do theirs, so it would have to be at our February board meeting at the latest. We need to have a decision made.
And what about with the Merced Police Department?
That's multi-year.
Yeah, we have a multi-year.
But it's something.
Yeah, we could
do
cancel
annually,
it.
right? But they haven't been able to support and staff either. Do they believe they can?
Merced struggles more with the staffing than the sheriff does, but the sheriff finally came forward and said, we're doing everything we can, but it's getting very difficult because we're pulling like somebody off the gang task force to come and sit in the school, which then leaves our streets uncovered.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, our preference would be to go with the plan the sheriff suggested, which is to add one more to help sub in the Merced area. I would not want to cut a contract with MPD over this. We can work it out.
Does anyone else have any other further comments or questions on superintendent goals? Okay.
Just a comment on the January study session. We have that scheduled for the 31st, I believe. 21st, 9 to noon with principals and cabinet there, if you please. And basically, it's just to go deeper on the challenges we see coming down the pike. So it's not necessarily more on the goals, or how we're going to do that, although it could be. It's more about, what are we going to be facing in the next few years from a staffing point of view? And what do we have to plan for now to make sure, we're in the best position possible? What do we have to plan for from a instruction point of view, skills point of view? What do we want for our students in the year 2030? So it's more of a long-range conversation.
So with that, we will move to the Employee Association comment period. Mr. Pust?
Good evening, President Ham, Board Member Superintendent Peterson, Cabinet, and Ms. Rohrbach. I don't have prepared comments on the math, but I did do some bullet points. And I wanted to say, first of all, that we are extremely pleased that this is a focus. Math is important for sure. But we really feel that we need to meet the students at the level at which we get them. We need to do it in a meaningful way that does not pose any unnecessary barriers for them to graduate and possibly attend junior college. Now, the Thinking Classroom trainings that we've been doing with MCOE, in my 25 years, this has been the most meaningful professional development that I've experienced. And it has really helped me start seeing that, you know what, just doing the skills-based stuff for my lower level kids is not good enough. It's getting them up and really doing what you guys are talking about, understanding that they can do more. So I think that if we continue this and don't expect just instant results and just push this narrative with our district, we're going to be on the right track. So I hope that you're patient with this process because I really feel like we're going in a good direction. Now, having said that, as we conclude the 2022 school year and break for the winter holiday, the Merced Union High School District Teachers Association would like to express our heartfelt gratitude for all who helped make this district an amazing place to be. We are a community with many gifts and talents, which we share daily with each other, and most importantly, our students. From the classroom, cafeteria, quad, front office, the home, and all points in between, our collective efforts to raise the whole child are filled with passion, commitment, and a willingness to make decisions that may be hard in the moment, but will be a positive, lasting influence in the future of all. We are grateful to our wonderful, talented, creative, inquisitive, optimistic, resourceful, and resilient students. Often they make us laugh. Sometimes they make us cry. But always they make us think. Most of all, they make us better. In the spirit of this holiday season, on behalf of the DTA, I want to personally thank all of you for everything that you do for our district. As we close this year, it is my fervent wish that only good fortune finds us all in the new year. And if you're a betting person, I'm putting my money on Argentina. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prest. Is there a representative here from CSEA? No. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Mrs. Jayasenga, would you like to take over reading the donations? I do have that, but I don't know where. Here you go.
Take that out? Okay. Okay. Just read the, I don't read donations, right?
I just,
The donors name?
Okay.
Okay. On behalf of the MUHSD, I'd like to thank the following donors. At Water High School, we have the Kiwanis Club of Greater Merced, Kona Ice, Buhat Colony High School. Oh, sorry. All the way down to, oh, sorry. Livingston High School, we have LG Education Systems, Sun Valley Pumping, Rancho San Miguel, Alejandro and Linda Gonzalez, Javier and Hortensio Romero. From Merced High School, Stephen and Kathleen Carlson, Janice Hoagland, Jill, and Elizabeth Carlson, and then Richard, I don't want to mispronounce the last name. thank you to all who've donated towards all the schools in MUHSD.
Did we call for the vote? Okay, call for the vote. Any questions, I should say? Are we, okay, passes 4-0. And from there, we'll move on to the action agenda. Scott, Dr. Weimer, the first you're right there in front of us. Thank you.
Good evening. We do have our first interim budget. This was the second, third year in a row where mass chaos was happening in June when we actually have to approve our budget by state law, and then they go and change everything after the fact. So this much better represents where we actually are at this particular point in time. So just a little bit of an update on the state of the state. The LAO, which is the Legislative Analyst's Office, has predicted a slowdown, but not a recession in California. The overall state budget deficit right now is predicted to be $25 billion, $2.6 billion in education. The COLA is predicted to be at about 8.7% for next year. Approximately $5.7 billion in one-time funds was included in this year's budget. So one of the things that we want to be looking at is when we see a $2.6 billion deficit in education, but we see $5.7 billion in one-time funding, hopefully that means we don't dip into the regular funding that we get. The state will be able to cut that funding, the one-time funding, in some of their new programs. The new programs were transportation reimbursement, which we do get, but in other programs were pre-K and ELOP, which is after-school programs. That is only for elementary schools. We do not get the ELOP funding. We got the original grant, but we don't get the ongoing funding. So if they do start to affect the new programs, two of the new programs are not programs that we actually offer in the high school district. So there's a lot of things that can be cut in the budget before it would actually impact our LCFF or COLA that we would be receiving from the state for next year. And the state does have an education reserve of $8.7 billion. So when they are required in good times to put money in, if it's a bad time, they'll be required to take some of that money out and then offset so that there are not as many cuts as they would make if they didn't have that funding. So the current outlook is a slowdown with a very mild recession. The state could cover the LCFF and COLA, which is what is our main funding sources, by accessing the reserves, but would have trouble providing any one-time funds, which has not been the norm, that we just got used to it for the last couple of years. One-time funding is not a normal thing, and covering the cost of new programs. So not too bad. That seemed to be reflected today. We had the CPI come out yesterday. Inflation has started to come down, not much, but at least it's on the downward side and no longer on the upward side. We did have a half a point increase in interest rates today was announced, so we do have the Fed Reserve doing that. That's where the very mild recession part is probably going to come in. They're talking about keeping rates at around 5% for a longer period of time. So that means basically they want to see a slowdown in the economy. So we are expecting that, but right now the state could probably cover that for 2 years without having any major impacts to the education side of the budget. So the state of MUHSD, enrollments at CBEDS was 11,224, and for 21-22 it was 11,177. So again, we are one of the few areas in the state that is in increasing enrollment. Most of the state is in declining enrollment, and the state as a whole is in declining enrollment. Attendance rates have improved to approximately 93%, but that's how we get paid, and that's still not normal. We do need that 95 to 96% to get back to our normal range. We are guaranteed our previous year's ADA if ADA falls, so we are going to get last year's ADA if this year is below that. And there was a bump last year because everybody got a bump that offered independent studies, regardless of how many students were actually there or not. You got a formula bump. That bump kicks up our ADA last year, so we're at that level for this year. Even if we slip below it, we'll get that. It would be next year then that we need to get that attendance rate back up before it would start to impact our ADA. And those were the bullets that I mentioned there. So most of the one-time funds are expected to be spent or assigned by the end of 24-25. So 25-26 will be our first, what we would consider a regular year. So all of our decisions and ongoing expenditures need to be looked at to making sure that that 25-26 year is the year that looks right and is in balance, because that'll be the first year where we don't have the one-time monies. All of that is gone, and we need to make sure that our budgets are balanced at 25-26. That will become part of the multi-year projection with next year's budget starting in June. So you will see that as the out year. That's the one we want to make sure we keep focusing on, that we stay as a balanced budget in that out year. So changes from June to now. What's included? We have increase in LCFF funding due to the COLA, so it went up quite a bit. We have ADA increases again because of that bump that we got last year in the independent studies. We also have the increased salary costs due to the raise. That's all in here now. One-time federal and state funds that were not received last year are included. So the arts instructional materials, the learning recovery grant, California Community Schools Partnership outdoor programs, those things are all now included. What is not going to be included, we are going to get some transportation reimbursement. That's not in here yet. We don't know exactly what that's going to be. Proposition 28, the new arts funding, does not start till 23-24, so you won't see that in this year's budget or in the multi-year projections, because we don't know what that will be yet. The expected increase to the COLA is not in here, so you're going to see it's still where the governor gave us in June for the budget is going to be higher than that. We know it will be higher than that now, but it's not in there because we don't know exactly what it will be. And increase in ADA starting in 23-24 if we get that increase back to normal. When we go through the fund balances, the key things, Fund 21 and 43, which are our facilities and bond funds, those funds, when we look at them, we have enough money in those funds to cover all of the things that we've been talking about. So the completion of the brick here at El Capitan, the completion of the softball field at Golden Valley, completion of the ticket booth at Livingston High School, replacement of the turf and refurbishment of the tracks at Atwater and Golden Valley, the all-weather track at Livingston, which, thank you, you just approved a moment ago, the pools at Atwater and Merced, stadiums at Buhack and El Capitan, and then the options to build out the Atwater Business Park. All of that will be included in those funds when you see those balances. Either the expenditure or the balance has enough to be able to cover all of those projects. Fund 17 is a reserve for economic uncertainties, and that's almost even right now. There's no extra money in it between what's in the general fund and Fund 17. We're at that 10% reserve for economic uncertainties. And Fund 20 is the post-employment benefits. So we do have money in there for PARs in 23-24, which will offset step and column increases and help bring our personnel expenses down for many years. And a second one would be at least 3 years out. So we don't want to be offering back to back. We have one or two we have to pay off right now. But if we offered one in 23-24 to be able to start to bring those personnel costs down, and then offered another one 3 years later, that is in that fund and available for us to do that. We need to switch over to the other one. The other one. No. 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 We still get to go through the one that you love to see 5-10 times a year.
So, Mr. Weimer, with this pause, what's your biggest concern?
I guess I have two concerns. One is we need to leave ourselves a little bit of a cushion, Fund 17 or somewhere else, until we get through all of the audits and FPMs over the next couple of years. There are so many rules and regulations. We've done a good job. We're not expecting any issues with the audit that's going to be late again this year. And I did ask at CASBO, everybody in the state's having the same issue. All the accounting firms across the state are being late with their audits the last year and again for this year. So we're not going to have any problems on that. I'm not seeing any. But there are so many rules and regulations that at some point we have to worry about whether something went through that shouldn't have, and we end up having to pay that back or something. So we do need to have a little bit of a cushion until that's through, and we make sure that everything that we spend in all these plans is audited and it went the way it went, and we don't have to cover any of those. So that would be the one. The other one would be making sure we don't do ongoing expenses with one-time monies, and that 25-26 year is balanced. Other than that, we can cover any one-time expense that we want. We're covering lots of things that we're going to be able to do. Next year is still going to be very, very good. We're going to be flush. You'll see the balances that are here. We just need to keep our eye on that 25-26. And without further ado, the famous slides. So we do have the average daily attendance. Again, you'll see the numbers that are fluctuating up and down, the 10,165. We do get to use that number even if we don't hit it this year, because we get to use the previous year for at least 1 year. If that number doesn't get back up to where we want it to be, then we would have a little bit of an issue. But we're not going to have any problem being above where we are in 2 years. So we are at $161 million from the LCFF. The revenue assumptions, 6.5 cents, 6.56 LCF COLA, and the reason that doesn't say 10%, you're going, wait a minute, we had 10%. We had already included the first part of it in the budget. This is the increase from what we had already included, so it was 10%. ADA 22-23 based on the 21-22, P2 at 10.25, and again, that number is low. That is going to go up in a year. We're going to be fine in that particular area. You do see the lottery and then the COLA. And again, the same thing was true with the COLA. It was actually the 10. So the revenues totaled $252 million. That's not normal. There's a lot of carryover from previous year into this year, and a lot of the one-time money that did come in. So this now has all of the ESSER funds coming in. It has the $18 million we're getting. Most of that can be spent between now and 25-26, but we're getting it all now. So it's all hitting at one time, and so you see a lot more income than we would normally be reporting. Expenditures, you see the 1.5 step-in column. That's what we're hoping to tackle with the PARs. If you give the PARs, you can wipe out that 1.5% step-in column every year for a couple of years. And so your automatic increases don't keep going up, because you're taking people who are at the top of the scale and retiring and replacing them with people at the lower end of the scale. And so you don't have that automatic increase at such a high rate. So I can get to the one that you really want to see. And again, you're going to see high expenditures because we do have to spend all of that one-time money over 3 years. So here, you see the major change from a negative balance at the adopted budget, which we knew was not going to be true, but we had to base what on the state gave us at that time. After they finally passed their budget and we know everything we're getting, we're going to be at a $46 million surplus. And this is the one that's a little bit small, but you really want to be looking at. So we are seeing, at first interim, we're going to be at a $46 million surplus ending balance. For 23-24, you do see that going down to $27 million because we're spending all of that one-time money. And in the third year at 24-25, you'll see 11.5. And what we want to see in June is when we come in with 25-26, which is the first year without any of the one-time money left, we want that 11.5 to still be 11.5. We want to be at a balanced budget when we see that 25-26 in June. And if not, take it out on Mr. Peterson. So our assumptions, you can see the supplemental concentration, the LCFF funding, COLA for the out years. We already know that this is not true, but we can't make the adjustments until we get the new number. So we'll get a new number in the January budget. So probably right after we have our January board meeting, we'll get the information from the state. We'll know it by February. So we will know what that COLA is going to be. And again, the LAO is predicting over 8%. So this is the activities, the student activities. Again, this is just an accounting mechanism. We have to put the student body funds in at the end of the year, and then we take it back out and give it to them. And it's just so that it's in the audit every year. And so this is actually student body funds. It comes to us at one point of the year, and then we just turn around and give it back to the student body offices to use throughout the year. Adult education is the consortium. We get the money from Merced College. They're the banker. And so that's not our expenses. That money just comes in for the consortium. Child development is what we have to pay for the Child Development Center that's on East Campus. Cafeteria services, again, the large part of the expenditures and the revenues comes from the reimbursement for the meals program. And then transportation, this is the money we put aside to replace the buses and the white fleet. Deferred maintenance, again, you'll see funds that are going in here. We have to spend 3% of our annual expenditures on routine maintenance, but that includes personnel and costs. So these are things like roof repairs, ongoing regular maintenance programs. The building fund, again, 21 and 43. You'll see a start of $18 million and $28 million to start. The bond fund is almost down to zero. The 43 will be down to about 27. But again, that includes all of those things are either in the expenditure column right now or in the balance column. So between the expenditure and what's balanced, we can pay for all those things that was on that previous slide. Special reserves, again, this is our 10% between this amount and the amount at the bottom of the general fund. We do have a 10% reserve that we're keeping. We cannot keep over 10%, so that's why you saw those two resolutions on the consent agenda. If we commit the funds, it's not part of the reserves. And so we have to commit excess funds that we're planning to spend in the out years, then it doesn't count in the reserves. And the special reserves for post-employment benefits, again, that's where we can pay for those PARS programs to help reduce the ongoing personnel costs. We have to put that one in there because Merced County tells us to, and it has to do with interest on the bond. We don't have anything to do with that, but we still have to show it. So it is a positive certification. We can obviously pay our bills for the next 2 years. That is not our concern. 25, 26 is, again, that year that we really want to be focused on. But we are going to be able to pay our bills, which is what we have to say at our first interim. So the superintendent recommends the board approve the positive certification, adopt the proposed revisions to the general fund balance submitted herein, adopt proposed revisions to the various other funds, and accept the criteria and standards summary review.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second it.
Are there any further questions, comments? Call for the vote.
I'm waiting one of these times when I get to the slides for Leslie to turn on the 3-minute timer.
That one passes 4-0. Dr. Weimer, I think you're up again.
So at the last meeting, we approved the concept of moving forward with replacing the network infrastructure. This is the actual technical documents that have gone through legal counsel to make sure that it meets the requirements. And this is the first of two. So we'll have this one tonight, and we will have another one in January. These are the financing agreements. And they do require that they come back to you. They wouldn't just let me sign them. So we do have to have them come through the board again. Again, legal counsel has looked at these and made sure it matches what we were talking about at the last meeting, and that everything is legal and all the processes are followed. And so basically what is happening is we are doing this over a 5-year period of time. They are leasing the equipment to us while we pay it off, and then at the end of the 5-year, when the term is over, we actually own it for $1. And so it is a 5-year plan to it is a 5-year plan to pay off what we plan to replace is meeting and that everything is legal. So the superintendent recommends the board approve resolution number 8-22.
Now, I've been using Grammarly for years. Now, the great thing is Grammarly is free and easy to use. It not only helps you check your grammar, but also ensures that your tone is appropriate for the audience you're writing for and that your sentences are clear and concise. And for those of you that are still in school, they recently came out with a brand new feature, which is called the auto citation feature, and it basically generates your citations as you're writing. It'll generate full and in-text citations without leaving the source site.
Passes 4-0. And now, let's see, Dr. Weimer is going to talk to us about the bid award for District Operations Nutritional Services Warehouse Tenant Improvement Project.
I'll try to do my best Dr. Weimer impression. President, it's me. President Ham, on December 7th, 2022, Merced Union High School District opened bids for the MUHSD District Operations Nutritional Services Warehouse Tenant Improvement Project. Of the 3 competitive bids MUHSD received, Harris Builders Incorporated was the lowest responsible and responsive bidder, providing a bid in the amount of $2.177 and $350. The results are attached. The superintendent recommends that the board award the bid to award the MUHSD District Operations Nutritional Services Warehouse Tenant Improvement Project to Harris Builders, Inc.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Ms. Ham.
I second that motion.
Are there any questions? I actually have a question. What did we anticipate this build-out was going to cost us?
Melissa, you give it a guess there?
Did the scope change or just costs of everything?
We're still finding that across everything that we bid on, and
Just an increase in cost.
YouTube Shorts presents the fun side of 2022.
I'm doing this video for a world record where I have to put a plunger on somebody's back. I just got to throw it, put it on your back.
Great job on this project, and I get these,
and it's something that's
these
refreshing.
figures,
And it's been
I'm-
a good way to
I'm,
get, you've done a great job
kind
organizing.
of excited because I can stay within his budget, and then, she has to come back,
both
and it's
in
not because
person
she's
and
not getting it
online.
right. We are shocked
Now
at
for
still
the
what
iPad
the
setup.
cost
Before I
is
start
of
the lesson,
building
I
things
log
right
in
now.
to Zoom through my iPad and enter as co-host. As co-host, I share my screen.
Is there room for growth in the building?
Use 2 monitors. One is my control center, and the other one is what my students see, both in person and
So
online.
it handles our current needs.
During my lessons, and I'll go over my setup in a bit.
Aaron,
To
you
start
wanna-
off, I use a projector and a camera.
Okay, yes, it's a 2,200 square foot building. It's not huge, but the design is very specific and the equipment to be efficient. So I do see potential for growth. Now, I mean, obviously our cafeterias right now are functioning, but infrastructure and equipment and things like that need to be replaced. So this is definitely an opportunity. So moving to this building will take away some of the bulk production that they need to do. So it'll move it off-site where we can transport it out to them. And as Dr. Weimer has shown us, we are growing. So the potential is there for us to do more things, just with efficient equipment, layout, properly putting our labor hours in, and potentially even picking up other districts. We've seen some opportunities for that where they need our help. And so I do see, I wish I could give you numbers, percentage-wise, how much, but I can't. But hey, I just see a lot of potential there, and we're really, really excited for the opportunity. So.
Awesome. What's the timeline to have that up and operational?
So we foresee June 31st of 2023. That is our expectation right now. We would begin construction approximately around the beginning of January. And it's tight. It is very tight because the timeline for this equipment, the lead times, it's going to be interesting to see how it comes out. So.
And Mr. Peterson, when you asked me one of my concerns, this is actually one of my other concerns, is the costs that we've seen in the last couple of years. So we're seeing this one coming in a little bit higher, but it is very specific, specialized equipment. We're seeing the track that you just approved come in about where we thought it would probably come in, even before we got that. So we've got one on each side. So I'm pushing him over here to get the pools bid as fast as we can, so I can see if that number comes in at what we're expecting, and we're getting a little bit back to normal on the construction costs.
And we are also pushing our Department of State architects.
Well, ahoy there! I'm here to save you.
Thank goodness.
Up to 80.
It has. It has been, as long as I've been associated with the construction, this has got to be the longest that they've ever been held up in DSA. Usually,
I'd like to call the
it's a
Capital
3 to
Facilities
4
Board
month, maybe at
Corporation,
the outside a 6-month process.
meeting
This
open.
has almost been 10 months.
Yes, very lengthy. And of course, we originally anticipated that we would begin in October of this year, and here we are in December. So it's
Is this Tim?
okay. Communicating with people that need to get it done. So.
We do have to remember that most other districts are sitting there at the fund balances that we have. And so every district is doing a $10 million
takes place in
HVAC
person
system
and
repair,
online
just like
simultaneously.
we are, and they're all pushing it through at the same time. And so you're going to get some bottlenecks on getting the approval through DSA.
Since we're talking about, well, I'll go back to the item on the agenda here. So you're confident that this could accommodate some expanding needs. So I think maybe what the concern is that we don't have additional needs, and then we see an expense like this again, with the cost that you're describing.
Sure, and maybe Erin can speak more to that. But I do know that we still have part of the facility left at the warehouse, so a convenience that we still hold.
Sure. Like I said, the equipment that we are putting in is more efficient, so it's ready to expand in our needs. One part of it that we don't talk about is the freezer that we're actually putting in. So we are increasing that size, and definitely through this, because of supply chain and being the size that we are, we have the opportunity to buy direct. We just haven't had the space. Thank God we have the freezer that we have, because it's gotten us through a lot of the past 2 years. And so we definitely see there where we'll have more buying power for procurement, and then just the size to hold everything, because that's really what's held us back along the way. So
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for the forethought.
And just one last comment. In 2.5 years, we do take ownership of the property that we are leasing right now that has the warehouse on it, and that has a nice freezer in it as well that's part of their operations. So in 2.5 years, that comes back to us, and the tenants will be out.
And so for the pools, there is no update on that in terms of when that'll come back from DSA?
Every day, our architects are checking, and they're holding the people responsible at DSA to get those things processed.
Okay.
So as soon as we have it out, again, tonight, you approved a pre-qualification process, so we're ready to go. That pre-qualification process puts contractors on notice that we're going to be putting this out to bid very soon, and only those that can do a great job need apply.
Thank you.
Call for the vote. Four oh. Mrs. Ballinger, classified management salary schedule.
Good evening and congratulations on your new roles on the board. The classified management salary schedule has been revised to include a new position listed as the speech and language pathology coordinator. The board must approve any revisions we make to the salary schedule. Therefore, the superintendent recommends the Board of Trustees approve the classified management salary schedule with the added speech and language pathology coordinator position.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second that motion.
Are there any further questions? Call for the vote. And that passes 4-0. Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you.
Ballinger. Mr. Peterson, the superintendent's report.
Okay, President Ham, I'll have to get used to that one. Sounds pretty good. The Winter Wishes Rally, successful at all sites. Students showed their gratitude to peers and family members, and thank you to our leadership, students, staff, and our community who donated a lot of money to make those wishes come true. We have the virtual art show going on right now. Atwater High School, Livingston High School, El Cap, and Merced High School have put together a selection of student work in a virtual art show. Digital art, illustration, animation, and photography. See the MUHSD homepage and the social media link to see our talented students' work. Some staff recognition. We're proud to announce that Mr. Drumonde, ag teacher at Livingston High School, was named the 2022 National Association of Agriculture's Educators Region 1 Outstanding Early Career Educator of the Year. Wow, that is long. He was one of 6 agricultural educators nationwide who received this award. Way to represent Livingston and our district, Mr. Drumonde. And Friday, we have coffee with the superintendent, which is this Friday, the 16th at 7:30 a.m., which is a YouTube live session, and we answer all questions that are submitted from parents, students, or community. So Viviana and I will be singing our favorite Christmas carols together. So tune in.
Wow.
Just sort of joking there. Did you like the process tonight for talking about goals for next year? That this is a little different than we have done it in the past. I thought it was a little cleaner, a little more straightforward.
I liked it.
Okay, very good. I'm wishing you, board members, all of our staff and community a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Communications, information, and future agenda items. Mr. Lopez?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, thank you, Ms. Pickle, for your 2 years of serving as president for the MUHSD Board of Trustees. I do appreciate your leadership, especially through these difficult times we had these past 2 years under your tenure. So thank you very much for that. I believe 3 of us attended the CSBA conference this past almost 2 weeks ago with Mr. Peterson, and had the opportunity to attend various sessions. I think just a couple that stood out to me was obviously on governing during difficult times and those challenges that have come about these times. And then the other one was on trustees and how we are to respond to emails. And one of the key points that I took away was that, knowing that we have the experts within our cabinet, within our leadership team, that we can refer the public to those specific areas that they're addressing. I am confident in responding to the public and saying, hey, I'll refer you to Dr. Aguilar if you have an EL question or academic or achievement question or facilities question, so that we don't put ourselves in any compromising position as far as, well, I spoke to Mr. Lopez and he said this, and Mrs. Ham agreed to him and this. And so just to be clear with that. And then the last thing we talked about was our English learners and how we can be very intentional in addressing their needs in the LCAP. But other than that, I wish everyone a happy holidays and and look forward to a happy new year. So thank you guys very much for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations, Mrs. Ham and Ms. Jayasinga. And thank you, Mr. Lopez, for your comment. Also attended the CSBA conference. It was very good. I'm happy that we are able to attend. I'm grateful for that. Some very good sessions. Congratulations to staff for their awards. First of all, congratulations, all of our programs that are running strong right now. Academic, athletic. We get a lot of that information coming in. Also attended the CSB conference. It's very good. Classrooms to read about it, see the pictures, watch the videos, attend. Excellent stuff going on out there. So thank you to all the congratulations to staff for their awards, for making that happen. All of our programs that are running strong right now. Academic, athletic. We get a lot of that information coming in. Also attended the CSB conference. It's very good. Everyone read about it, see the safe and happy holiday season. Enjoy some time. Excellent stuff going on out there. So thank you to all the congratulations to staff for their awards, for making that happen. All of our programs that are running strong right now. Academic, athletic. We get a lot of that information. Also attended the CSB conference. It's very good. Read about it, see the safe and happy holiday season. Enjoy some time. Excellent stuff going on out there. So thank you to all the congratulations to staff for their awards, for making that happen. All of our programs that are running strong right now. Academic, athletic. We get a lot of that information. Also attended the CSB conference. It's very good. Read about it, see the safe and happy holiday season. Enjoy some time. Excellent stuff going on out there. So thank you to all the congratulations to staff for their awards, for making that happen. All of our programs that are running strong right now. Academic, athletic. We get a lot of that information. Also attended the CSB conference. It's very good. Read about it, see the safe and happy holiday season. Enjoy some time. Excellent stuff going on out there. So thank you to all the congratulations to staff for their awards, for making that happen. All of our programs that are running strong right now. Academic, athletic. We get a lot of that information. Also attended the CSB conference. It's very good. Read about it, see the safe and happy holiday season. Enjoy some time. Excellent stuff going on out there. So thank you to all the congratulations to staff for their awards, for making that happen. All of our programs that are running strong right now. Academic, athletic. We get a lot of that information. Also attended the CSB conference. It's very good. Read about it, see the safe and happy holiday season. Enjoy some time. Excellent stuff going on out there. So
I too would like to thank
congratulations to staff
very much for her
making that
service. She
happen.
was
All of our
fair and
programs
kept us on task. I don't think it's a very good start, but it's almost 8:30 and they're still going.
Also attended the CSB conference. It's very good. Read about it, see the safe and happy holiday season. Enjoy some time. Excellent stuff going on out there. So
I too would like to thank
congratulations to staff
very much for her
making that
service. She
happen.
was
All of our
fair and kept us on task. I don't think it's a very good start, but it's almost 8:30 and they're still going.
Also attended the CSB conference. It's very good. Read about it, see the safe and happy holiday season. Enjoy some time. Excellent stuff going on out there. So
I too would like to thank
congratulations to staff
very much for her
making
service.
that
She
happen.
was
All of our
fair and kept us on task. I don't think it's a very good start, It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of positive energy. Congratulations to all very much work for your happen. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy it's a very good start. It's almost 8:30 and they're still going. I really think both schools do an exceptional job promoting MUHSD. Safe and happy holiday season for your extra efforts of
positive notes.